Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Council Lori. Here. Council Martin.
Here.
Council Madonza.
Here.
Council Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Council Dewan.
Here.
Council Elliott.
Here.
Council Kennedy.
Here.
Council Leahy.
Here.
It's 9 present.
Thank you. We have first under Mayor's business, communication for the Sister Cities Task Force recommending approval of the Sister City relationship between Lowell and Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic, for a vote of the City Council. We have a speaker here, Pastor Nazim, who has brought the proposal forward.
Thank you. Good evening. It's an amazing opportunity again. I had the privilege a few years ago to be the MC of the sister city between Nairobi, Kenya, and Lowell. About 12 months ago, I was in the Dominican Republic, and I met the mayor of the capital, Santo Domingo East, and we created a partnership where the city of Santo Domingo has given us a building, a warehouse, to fill that warehouse with goods for the Dominican Republic people so that they will not have to keep on coming here looking for gifts. We're going to fill that place year-round with all kind of home goods and necessary things that they need, especially as a clergy person for the churches of the nation of the Dominican Republic. So the relationship widened, and I approached our honorable mayor about this invitation, and I invited the mayor of the Santo Domingo East, San Pedro de Macorís, and Nagua. 3 cities, 3 mayors will be coming next week on the 19th of July. 4 governors and the Minister of Foreign Affairs will be arriving here too as our guests on that day, July 19. So what I'm proposing and I'm asking to approve is this program where I met with Greg Page, and we went over the importance of this vision of having this Twin City program, but to create and invent a committee that will sustain this. This will not be just a one-day event. There will be actually on Saturday morning on the 20th, there will be a roundtable discussion between the officials and the dignitaries that will be arriving. About 25 dignitaries are coming, and we're going to host them, and we putting, our church is paying for their hotels and their lodging and food and touring the state of Massachusetts. It's an extraordinary opportunity. Again, it's the city of Nagua, the city of Pedro, Sao Pedro, and Santo Domingo. We would like to raise the flag of the Dominican Republic on that morning, July 19 at 10 a.m. And that's what I'm here for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any discussion? Entertain a motion to refer to the Law Department for a proper vote. So moved by Councilman Donson, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next on the City Clerk's portion of the agenda, we had minutes of the City Council meeting, June 25th. The Zoning Subcommittee, June 25th, for acceptance. Motion to approve by Councilman Donson, second by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. After you get out of the business of the city clerk, I have a moment of silence. That's all right.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber for G. Douglas Golden, a lifelong resident of Lowell. He was the beloved husband of Ann Golden, with whom he celebrated 61 years of marriage. He received his early education in the Lowell school system, but left school at the beginning of World War II to serve his country. Upon his return from the service, he went on to earn his GED. Mr. Golden enlisted in the United States Navy and participated in Okinawa invasion. After he served aboard the USS Okinsani CV-34 in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, during the Korean War. He was awarded the Nation Defense Service Medal and was honorably discharged. Mr. Golden was a member of the Walker Rogers Post 662 Veterans of Foreign Wars. He was a communicant of St. Margaret's Church and a member of St. Vincent de Paul Society, and was an altar server for many years. In addition to his wife, Anne, he is survived by his son, former school committee man and City of Lowell police officer Timothy Golden, and his 3 grandchildren, Lindsay, Molly, and Madeline, all of Lowell. He was a remarkable gentleman. We offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and his many, many friends. He will be truly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd all please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the city manager's portion of the agenda, communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Council Lori.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the manager and the proper departments for coming back pretty quickly on the Keith Rudy, naming the field for Keithy Rudy, softball field number 2. And I know I'll be at the Parks Department's next meeting on last Wednesday in July, and I'm sure Councilor Mercy will be also. And also, I put in, along with Councilor Mercy, to a long-term solution around Calorie Field. I don't know if there's really a solution there. I know they're going to change the parking around the streets, and the only concern I had with that is they're going to put no parking on Wilder Street, from what I understand, in front of the residence home. And I don't know if that would, if I've read the report that I looked at properly, that could be a concern down the road. People not being allowed to park in front of their homes. I don't have the sheet in front of me, but let me see.
Mr. Manager.
Councilor, perhaps Mr. Bakey could speak to that issue.
Good evening, everyone. The proposal that the traffic engineer came back with doesn't propose to make any changes on Wilder Street at all. It does propose to make a change on Parker Street, which would actually shift the double yellow center line a little bit off-center, which would allow for enough room to have 1 lane of parking along the ball field side of Parker Street for most of the length between Wilder and Stevens. At present, there's not sufficient room to park safely on either side of the street. And there are posted no parking signs, although there apparently is no ordinance behind them. And the proposal would be to basically maintain the existing conditions on the, I guess it would be the south side of Parker Street, but on the north side, by moving the center line, you would actually make it possible to park legally where it is not possible to park safely today.
What's the only concern I saw? I saw one area where they were going to possibly take some area, parking away from residents, and that was the only concern. But it is a tight area over there. And I think, talking to one person at the park, they were hoping we could make some arrangements to put some parking along the ball field. I don't know if that's even feasible. It's,
Yeah, there were a number of concerns related primarily to handling the stormwater impacts associated with trying to squeeze some parking in. And by the time you accommodated the drainage impacts, not only would you dramatically increase the cost, but you would also end up with very little usable space to actually park in, and you'd put a lot of effort into not gaining very many parking spaces. This is a way for very low cost and no drainage impacts, we can actually generate more parking spaces.
okay, thank you.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. If I could ask Mr. Bakey another question on that. Is this the decision that they're gonna go with, or is this a suggestion right now?
Well, this is the recommendation of the traffic engineer, and obviously, if the city council feels that a different solution is more appropriate, obviously, we will heed that, but in the absence of any opinion to the contrary, this is what they would plan to proceed with.
All right, my concern is the speed of that road, though. If we narrow that down and we have cars parked along that, I know it's only at certain times with the baseball. I just don't feel like that's a safe solution, but, I mean,
Well-
how do we, I used to live up there, and I know that, you know, we can't control the speeding cars, so now you're adding a row of cars, kids running out. I don't know, there's no alternative on, like, a slower street on the other side? What's that, A Street maybe on the other side, or B Street?
Well, parking is actually already legal and utilized on B Street. The problem is that's not sufficient and not proximate to the two largest of the ball fields. There's a smaller ball field that actually is on the B Street side, as well as some tennis courts. People already use B Street to park, and it's perfectly legal, and there'd be no change to that. The issue occurs on the Parker Street side.
Yeah.
I would say, just point out, however, that if the concern is speeding behaviors under the current alignment where parking is prohibited and the lanes are particularly wide, two of the things that actually have been proven consistently to reduce travel speeds is narrowing travel lanes and adding parked cars. So if your concern is actually trying to reduce speeding along there, which I don't think we have any data to say is a significant problem, but in the event that there is a problem, this proposed solution will actually help address that as well.
All right, I would just ask that if this ends up being the solution, that it be monitored, because, you know, I think as parents, you notice the speeding more than when your kids are older or out of the house, you know what I mean? So it's really, you know, when your kids are little, that's when you're yelling at people to slow down, and that's all you do all the time, because you're concerned that, you know, someone's gonna get hurt, so. All right, I appreciate it, it just always makes me leery when we narrow those lanes, but,
Good.
thank you.
Councilor Noon, then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Becky, on the same topic, I believe the note indicated that there was a conversation with the representative from St. Margaret's School. What came of that conversation?
I was not party to those conversations, but what I understand is that the St. Margaret's School identified essentially liability concerns that have been a problem for them in the past, and as a result, they were not able to contribute their parking lot as a solution to this problem.
That's, I mean, if we can work it out, then that would solve that parking issues, because in the summer, there's no school, and so I understand the school, I mean.
Yeah, unfortunately, as the private property owner, we can't force
understand.
them to allow public parking on their
Thank you,
property.
thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Adam Bakey. I did co-sponsor the motion with Councilor Laurie, and it seemed to suit me well, because the reason I made the motion was because they were parking along a section of that road, Parker Street, that said no parking, so they were parking illegally and nobody was enforcing it. Now, once they realized it was going to be enforced, now they had no place to park. So the effort that I said, which is what's happening here, is the no parking signs along the park side of the road would be removed and installed along the residential side of the street, which is the thing that it should be. It would not provide any additional parking, but it would make legal those parking where they were illegally parked. So I think this is what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Any further discussion on this or other communications? Entertain a motion then to accept and place on file. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilman Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a communication relevant to the public hearing later. Report and recommendation from the planning board regarding the proposed amendment extending the TMU zoning district to include the properties with frontage along Rogers Street. between and including 576 and 687 Rogers Street, 39 Whitehead Avenue, 550 Douglas Road, and 500 Wentworth Avenue. Motion to accept and place on file.
Right. So
Moved
moved.
by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next communication from the city manager to request approval of out-of-state travel, 2 for the Department of Planning and Development, and 1 for the library.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Noon. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation by the interim police superintendent, Deborah Friedel, regarding summer policing. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report that Superintendent Friedel will be presenting is in response to a motion that was put forward by Councilor Martin and approved by the council, and it's essentially to update the council on what is taking place with the police department this summer to deal with any issues that arise. As you know, the summer is probably our busiest time here in the city, and so we're trying to get out in front of any issues that might arise, problems that may occur, and so Superintendent Friedel will be here to make that presentation and answer any questions that the council members might have.
Thank you. Good evening. If you'll bear with me, I'll actually start talking about some of the strategies that we've had in place probably since late spring and now segueing us into the summer, because we recognize each season has its own unique issues, but with increased daylight hours and the warm temperatures and outdoor activities, definitely the lack of school in session and so forth all serve to create a different type of environment in the summer months. So we have a number of different initiatives. A lot of the initiatives involve youth and teens and particularly at-risk population. So before I move into some of the sort of additional strategies that we use, I want to say that this is all in addition to sort of our normal work that we do day in and day out. So responding to calls, responding to spikes in crime and so forth. So these are additional strategies that we use to hopefully reduce some of the incidences that we see. So we started in the spring with underage alcohol enforcement. Specifically, we went around and did compliance checks in the liquor establishments in the city and liquor stores and restaurants, and sadly we uncovered 12 violations. Individuals served alcohol to minors during those compliance checks. All 12 of those violations were documented and sent forward for action by the License Commission. Once as the year was ending, and we'll do this again later in the season when the university is in session, we have essentially what we call party patrols in the area of the university. As the students sort of wind down the school year, we tend to get a spike in loud party calls, the increased use of alcohol and such. And those party patrols involve a partnership between the Lowell Police Department and the university police. I think we've called it the U-Plan. That strategy has been in place for a while. And we go out together when we respond to off-campus noise complaints, party calls. Once we determine that there's university students involved, the campus police respond with us, and they're able to take administrative action against the students, even though it's off-campus types of incidences. So moving back to the front of the sheet that I've given you, we have Shannon Grant funding. We use those Shannon Grant funds to saturate patrols in gang hotspots. So we're closely monitoring any gang activity and identifying those areas. We can actually put out extra patrols. We're able to extend the staffing in the gang unit throughout the summer, again, using overtime funds to either hire gang unit officers to work additional shifts or bringing in other patrol officers on overtime to supplement the gang unit staffing so we can maintain constant levels there. We routinely participate in home visits to youth that we have on what we call the Safety First list. These are high-risk youth that are chronic offenders in the city that we're collaborating with other partner agencies, and we conduct home visits to monitor their behavior in the community. We continue to partner with outside agencies to provide services to youth. We have another initiative in place. It's called the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative. This is quite important. We have an outreach coordinator that's employed under that grant that works at the police department, and it's her role to connect the youth that are identified under this program with the necessary services to be successful. This program targets young males ages 14 to 24 who have been either victims, witnesses, or perpetrators of serious violent crimes. They are known as impact players in gangs or the repeat offenders released from state or county supervision that are identified as likely to recidivate. So these are definitely high-risk young people, 14 to 24, capable of continuing a crime spree. And we provide intensive services to hopefully enhance their success in their return to the community. Home visits are a significant component of this program, where we provide police officers and others to visit these young people in their natural environment, in their homes, to get a better handle on their success. There's a project called Photo Voice, which was kind of interesting that under this same initiative they're participating in. It's a community-based project in which highly at-risk and proven risk youth will be capturing images of the city with digital cameras to explain their definition of community safety. The outreach coordinator that I mentioned, there's an employee of the police department, is working with approximately 12 youth on this project. We have a project in Centerville that we call Fire. It's the Centerville Friends for Improvement, Revitalization, and Enforcement. The implementation officially began July 8th, although a number of the initiatives haven't yet kicked off, but they will include saturation patrols, home visits, surveillance, and neighborhood impact teams. We'll be partnering with social service agencies and youth agencies to provide specialized targeted services over there in the Centerville neighborhood. And we expect that will have a significant impact over there. We've taken to disseminating safety tips via Facebook and Twitter. Recently, I attended a meeting at the district attorney's office, and they had prepared a number of different safety brochures around issues that we see, sadly, in the summer months: children falling out of windows, water safety issues, drownings, children left in unattended vehicles in the heat, and so forth. So we're making those available out to the community in any opportunity that we can. We have a number of our school resource officers that are not currently involved in school sessions. They're employed in different facets. We have one school resource officer that's assigned under the Police Athletic League program at the Boys and Girls Club. He's continuing to be involved with the programs there this summer. From what I understand, they're using Clemente Park for a day camp being run by the Boys and Girls Club, so that officer is assigned to that location. We have two other school resource officers that are deployed to the city parks. That was an initiative started last summer. We've added a second officer so that we can cover a little bit more area. So they'll be alternating and going to wherever the recreation programs are being run in the city this summer. In addition to that, we have the other school resource officers, the remaining officers, running the summer youth camp that we hold, that we've run for a number of years. Currently, we have 7th and 8th grade students attending the camp. It will graduate this Friday. It's a 3-week-long camp. We have the largest group that we've ever had. We have 110 students in the camp. Normally, we run about 80. It's free, and it lasts for 3 weeks. The next session, which will also be 3 weeks in length, is 5th and 6th graders. So we'll be continuing that throughout the summer. In addition to these activities, we have various upcoming events in the city. Obviously, we just went through the 4th of July fireworks on the 5th, but we have upcoming, obviously, the Folk Festival, we have the Puerto Rican Festival, the National Night Out on August 6th, and the Southeast Asian Water Festival. These are some of the bigger events that are occurring, and we will be participating in all of those, assigning a captain to develop an operations plan to get us through these events, and so we can ensure that these are successful events without any problems. We've, because we see the ongoing, very well-attended, along the banks of the river, on both sides of the river, but particularly where the folks walk over by the boathouse, we're going to have some regular patrols up there because there's a high volume, the beach is in use, people are walking, a lot of activities going on there in the summer months, so we're going to have increased visibility over there by the officers. That will include also some patrols on the Riverwalk down here as well. The downtown initiative continues that we've talked about many times. We have not stopped our efforts downtown. We have additional officers deployed each Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evening, and we'll be continuing that throughout the summer. Again, you see, we have more home visits that we're participating in. We have a state reentry grant that targets 17 to 24-year-old ex-offenders, and we conduct home visits with that population. And we connect domestic violence victims with services during that time as well. We recently concluded our smart policing initiative, and that targeted drug and drug-related crimes, and it enabled us, again, with additional funds and specialized enforcement strategies to put additional officers out there in targeted areas. But that particular project just recently concluded. Traffic enforcement, we have some grant mobilizations there. We participated in a Click It or Ticket campaign from May 20th to June 2nd. And we will be participating in a Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over initiative from August 16th to September 2nd. And I'm sure that will be in addition to any of the regular OUI checkpoints that occur here in the city. We've participated in a pedestrian safety initiative, targeted enforcement in high traffic areas. That's always something that we get complaints about is pedestrian safety, so we try to get out there. We use police personnel or volunteers to be either to be pedestrians and to see how they're handled, or we just simply monitor crosswalks and such and take enforcement action when we see violations. Another strategy that we're using is sort of team initiatives to augment sector resources to deal with street-level crimes, such as prostitution and drugs, et cetera. So we're pulling together on a daily basis some of our officers from our warrant unit, community response, and our special investigations section to work as teams to combat pockets of crime and again, we're going to stagger that so that there's no predictability as to when we're going to be out there and what neighborhood we're going to appear in. So those are some of the different programs, if you will, that are ongoing and that will continue to go on over the summer. One of the other things that we're doing that's worked successfully, and we're going to keep doing that, is the strategic use of overtime by the sector commanders. So we talked about perhaps the role of the sector commanders. They're tasked with reviewing every day the crime information that's coming in and developing strategies to address those issues in their sector. We talked about the directed patrols earlier, which are those sector commanders give specific instructions to the officers in their area to target maybe a particular parking lot or a particular neighborhood that's had a rash of car breaks and so forth, or maybe it's a prostitution activity on a particular street, or problems at a particular, lots of shoplifters maybe at a particular location and they're having problems, so we're going to spend some time there. So whatever the current crime trend is, the sector commanders are identifying that and providing instructions to the officers, and hopefully we're strategically deploying our resources. But it's also helpful for the sector commanders to have some tools available to bring in additional resources. Like everyone else, this is a time of year that our employees like to enjoy their vacations, and so we have folks that are normally assigned to an area that might be on vacation. We have other officers filling in, but to bring in additional officers, it's helpful to have funds available. So we're earmarking some monies to each out of our budget, not additional funds, but that we're making sure that the sectors have access to some overtime funds to supplement resources. So not to think that our staffing diminishes significantly. We don't do any training in the summer. So in other words, we're not pulling our resources in too many different directions. We do our training in the spring and fall, summer, so our resources stay pretty much level throughout the year, but this is vacation season, so we do see some transition in personnel, and they have the resources available to bring in extra staff. So those are some of the initiatives that are underway to hopefully increase safety. We had 2 motions recently, one about summer safety, but we also had increasing safety in the neighborhoods, and I think that this shows you sort of this is the same, probably the same answer to both questions for the time being. And again, as the fall season approaches, the school's back in session, increased calls perhaps around the university as the students arrive back and they get settled in. Some of the activity in the downtown will pick up a bit again. It tends to slow down, quiet down a little bit in the summer. People again are on vacation, they go elsewhere and so forth. But so I'll be certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councilor Martin, then Councilor Lowry, then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Chief. Certainly appreciate the report and the information. I know a number of us are familiar with a lot of these programs, but I think it's helpful for the public to hear and for us to hear sort of the multifaceted approach that the police department takes to things that we face in the summer. So I was particularly pleased to see how many of these involve home visits, especially to what I assume are kind of either people who've offended in the past or have been targeted as likely to offend, people that know they're being watched. And I think as productive as these other things are, we want to keep young people employed and with plenty of activities. Sometimes that doesn't work, and this sort of in-your-face approach, I think, is very helpful. So I was happy to see it spread across a number of programs. But I do appreciate the work that's been done to date. I appreciate the information tonight. So far, so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to just say to the acting chief, what a great job the police department did the other night at the fireworks. The traffic came in very quickly. They got people into the stadium. There was no problems. And really, there was no traffic leaving the stadium. And I didn't see it. There was a large group of people on the VFW.
Yeah, I think that's something where we'll definitely talk about that. We need to sort of strategize a little bit better about that for next year, if that's...
It went well, though. I guess there was no traffic problems.
Well, there was no traffic because we had to shut it down. Well, it turns out that one of the best viewing areas for the fireworks was actually on the VFW highway, and despite our efforts, folks just decided to stop there and became unsafe, so we had to shut it down just for maybe 20 minutes and then open it back up. But we'll
It worked. People had a great time, and they had to close it for a few minutes, but
yeah.
you know, it went very, very well, and I just want to say congratulations. And the other thing is something I put in last year was the park program with the police work, and I think it was Officer Bernard.
Yes.
We didn't have an incident last year in the park program. The police did an excellent job, and I look forward to seeing it again this year.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation, Madam Superintendent. Great job. Earlier this evening, we had a public safety subcommittee, and at that time, before it started, some of the neighborhood groups spoke to me about safety and concerns in the neighborhood. And speaking about safety in neighborhoods, the police department is not an island unto themselves. We encompass a large area with the university, with the national park, and I would like to see where police officers are having vacations, if the two entities can step up to the plate along with us and have help from the university police, UMass Lowell Police, the National Park Services, to see if they could coordinate some sort of an effort, being in the neighborhood of Pawtucketville, the downtown, and the areas like that. It isn't all about the police. We got to work together to make this a better city and a safer city, and that's the issue that I wanted to say.
We have a great relationship with both of those entities, and we call upon them when we need extra resources. We absolutely have no problem calling them and receiving anything that we need. In fact, both the Park Service and the UMass Lowell Police regularly attend our ComStat meetings every 2 weeks to talk about crimes. We have common interests. They're both located within the same city streets that we patrol, and so they regularly participate. We have an excellent relationship with them and have had no issues, and they are available, and I'm sure that they will be in the future.
And I'd like to see more of a joint effort with the police getting to know the neighborhood, and they don't know the neighborhood if they're cruising around in a cruiser. I like to see in an effort to put them physically fit and to conserve energy and gas, to get them walking in the neighborhood, to get them on bikes, to get them to stop and talk to the people.
In the last few weeks of the last fiscal year, we still had some funds remaining, and I did exactly that. I made some funds available to all 3 sector commanders, and the stipulation was they could identify what hours the officers work based on their varied needs in the sectors, but the officers must be on bicycle or foot patrol in a high visibility location, and then they could expend the funds in any way that they saw fit. And I'd like to continue to do that. And again, when we have less staff, they're more likely to be in the rapid, response vehicles. They're going to be in the cars. When we have increased staffing, you'll see them out, but it's not always at the times when you want to see them, such as the weekends when, again, people like to take time off and so forth. So we can balance that with strategic use of overtime funds to make sure we have that presence. But I agree with you. We're much more approachable. People notice the police officers much more if they're on foot or on a bicycle.
You make the department proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this presentation? Entertain then motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you very much. Being after 7 o'clock, we move to the public hearing portion of the agenda. First public hearing is vote to accept the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half of Mass General Laws to establish an enterprise fund for the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Reading by title in City Council vote. Accepting the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half of Massachusetts General Laws, an act authorizing cities and towns to establish an enterprise fund for the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. At this point, I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Roll call, please.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance to amend zoning for Rogers Street to extend the TMU district. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Reading by title in City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Zoning by extending the traditional mixed-use zoning district to include all parcels located in Lowell with frontage on Rogers Street, as well as the entirety of 39 Whitehead Avenue, 550 Douglas Road, and 500 Wentworth Avenue in Lowell, all of which are presently zoned regional retail. At this point, I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in favor. If you'd please state your name and address for the record.
Steve Haddon, on 35 Harlan Avenue in Lowell. I am in favor of this zoning change. I submitted a letter to the councilors outlining, I've been organizing the Belvedere Neighborhood Group, so I outlined the chronology of the events that surrounding this petition to change the zoning, as well as what precipitated those events. I won't go through that now. I just like to go through why I think this is a good idea, good for the neighborhood, good for the city, and it's largely based in the city's master plan, which I will quote extensively here. This is the officially adopted document that establishes the long-term policies and shared vision for smart, responsible development within the city. Again, quoting, "It is a living document evolving in response to changing community needs, providing a framework for the development over the next 10 to 15 years, and establishes a comprehensive and shared vision for the future. It is grounded in both public opinion and practical understanding of developmental trends impacting Lowell." The first and section of this, it's divided into 9 sections, has to do with neighborhoods and sustainable neighborhoods, developing sustainable neighborhoods, and that is outlined into 9 bullet points, 4 of which are very pertinent to this particular zoning change. The first one is to preserve the unique quality and character of each of Lowell's neighborhoods. The second is to promote safety and welcoming neighborhoods. The third is to prioritize land use policies that provide walkable, well-networked neighborhoods. And the fourth is to support vibrant neighborhood business districts that are easily accessible to all residents. Okay, so when each of these bullets is broken down into several objectives as how these are to be accomplished. Preserving the unique quality of the neighborhood, it says work with the community to identify neighborhood characteristics to be protected, preserved, and enhanced. Continue to reform zoning codes to align with the evolving and emergent community needs, land uses, and the type of neighborhood character. And regarding to promoting safety and welcoming neighborhoods, to provide clear, professional, and consistent support to land use boards seeking to communicate information relative to the project's proposal's content so as to ensure that the project's surroundings are respected and taken into account. And I commend our planning board. As you know, this was precipitated by the Taco Bell wanting to put a restaurant there. I commend our planning board. Right now, the regional retail zone would allow that to go in, but our planning board took into consideration the surrounding neighborhood in their decision to vote that down. I commend them for that. Also, explore creative approaches to lessen the impact of auto-served establishments on the residential and mixed-use neighborhoods, and to routinely update, implement, and develop new neighborhood plans in collaboration with the local community. Third objective, prioritize land use policies to promote walkable network neighborhoods. This is to enhance the pedestrian environment and encourage walkability and adaptable landscapes requirements for new development projects. Encourage mixed-use development where it will enhance the viability of the neighborhood commercial districts and amend the neighborhood and or be consistent with the historic land use patterns that help shape and define the neighborhood as they are. Also, revise zoning requirements to support and preserve the residential character of Lowell's neighborhoods. And fourthly, to support vibrant neighborhood business districts that are easily accessible to all residents. And this is to conduct regular neighborhood business districts inventories and audits to map assessments and to determine which types of businesses to attract to improve the general vitality of the area, and to encourage a diversity of retail options within business districts that will provide local jobs and enforce the livability of the surrounding neighborhood. The traditional mixed-use zone is a commercial zoning district, and in my opinion, this is the one that best describes that area as it is right now. So this change is more or less to preserve what is there now, to keep it, the types of small businesses which support the neighborhood and are supported by the neighborhood. And the description of the traditional mixed-use zone is one that promotes a vibrant business environment in Lowell's traditional neighborhood centers that enhances the character of the surrounding neighborhood. The TMU district is designated to promote a mix of residential and retail uses in these areas where neighborhood-scale commercial activity can enhance the character of the surrounding area. I'd like this to be a thriving business center. I'd like it to be a thriving area in our neighborhood. I'd like to see it develop and improve, but I'd like to see it develop and improve under the guidelines of our city's master plan that was put together by our planning department with public input and endorsed, I think, largely endorsed by all of the council. And I think this move will help get us toward those goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Page. I reside at 26 Fremont Street in Lowell, and I'm the president of the Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council. I've been asked to read some notes. Nancy Judge is the leader of the Highlands Group and was unable to attend tonight and asked if I could pass her thoughts on to you that she emailed over. Nancy A. Judge, 28 Foch Street, Lowell, 01851, Highlands. Zoning change section of Rogers Street to the Lowell City Council. I'm writing this letter to support the Belvedere Neighborhood Group to extend TMU, traditional mixed use, on the section of Rogers Street, which is heavily residential and also heavily traveled, and if the regional retail zoning type development were to happen or continue, this would only cause more traffic flow and safety issues for the neighborhood and its residents. As co-chair of the Highlands Neighborhood Association, we went through a recent zoning issue on Stedman Street, which played havoc with the businesses and residents in the area. Many meetings, postponements, and now an appeal. So I ask that before you make a decision, please take into consideration what adverse effect zoning has on the character and impact on the neighborhood, safety issues, and certainly traffic. Thank you for listening to the concerns of the neighborhood leaders. Nancy A. Judge, Highlands Neighborhood Association. And for myself, dear city councilors, you are considering changing a zone again here in Lowell. This area in discussion needs to have the traditional mixed use to be extended. From the intersection of Rogers Street and Berkeley Ave eastward along Rogers Street to the intersection of Rogers Street and Phoenix Ave, replacing this area that now has an existing regional retail zone. There are many houses in this area, and it's one thing to have a lawyer's office or a realty office or even a hairdresser as a neighbor. But it's having a regional retail zone. It's too easy to wake up some morning and find that a franchise is now your neighbor. A franchise that wants to stay open till 3 or 4 in the morning, or better yet, wants to have one of those fabulous drive-throughs, and you know how much fun those are. We do not want to stop business from coming in, but you, the council, are responsible to protect our neighborhoods and the quality of life in each neighborhood. Every neighborhood has a small business area, but you have to be careful when you start to overpower a neighborhood in the area where people live and raise their families. And some neighborhoods are concerned about the property of their value of their property. So, let's put it this way, as a homeowner, how much do you think your house would be worth if you had a Taco Bell in the backyard? So you have to consider these things when you're going to take your vote. Lowell is big enough for all of us. We just have to be considerate of our neighbors. Thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name's Steve Lehman. I'm at 213 Parkview. And I want to speak in strong favor of extending traditional mixed use and of this zoning proposal. My wife and I moved here 30 years ago. We've been in the same house for just about 30 years. And we like the neighborhood, and we like the commercial district that's along Rogers. In fact, we are consistent and have been consistent customers of those people. This is a retail area that's supported by the neighborhoods. My mechanic is on Rogers Street, my dry cleaner, my liquor store, my florist, where I get my Chinese food. They're all right there. And we've been supporting that area for 30 years. So we like the fact that it's commercial there. We like the fact that it's a commercial district that caters to the neighborhood, that are good community citizens, that know the neighbors. When I walk into these retail establishments, they know me by name. I like that. It's an area that is considerably too small and too congested for the kinds of uses that are suggested and allowed under regional retail. Already, it's moved from that road goes from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road. Already, I've seen in the years that I've been here, the traffic congestion increase over time. I've seen accidents, serious accidents, as a result of that congestion. It would get considerably worse were the full extent of regional retail realized along there. So with that, I thank you for your consideration of this. I stand in strong support of this proposal.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor?
Leo Gano, 241 Clark Road, Lowell, obviously. I want to speak in favor of this because of the fact that the distance or the depth at the present time would not allow a regional retail unit to build there without nibbling away at the existing residential area. And I don't think that this makes sense. The southerly side of Roger Street cannot support a retail area, and the depth of the zoning on the northerly side will not support a large retail outlet. I just can't see this happening, and it will not affect the values of the existing commercial area that's there at this point. Those folks won't suffer from this by just extending this zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor?
Hi, I'm Terry Dillingham from 154 Parkview Ave. I would also like to speak and strongly encourage you to approve the proposed amendment before you to extend the traditional mixed-use zone along Rogers Street. I am not opposed to commercial development as well. We just want to ensure that the commercial development supports our neighborhood. The relevant section of Rogers Street is a gateway into the city and should be carefully and appropriately developed. The neighborhood that I live in, and a lot of the people here live in, is a historic area which is full of residents who take pride in our neighborhood and take pride in the city and share an enormous amount of our time, energy, and resources supporting the entire city. My husband and I have chosen, he grew up in Lowell, I'm not from Lowell, but I'm a convert. We've chosen to raise our family. We have 2 really young kids in Lowell. He coaches the Little League teams, and we devote a ton of time. We go to the MRT, we eat out, we make an effort to eat downtown. But if our neighborhood changes, if this zoning impacts our home value and the safety of our children, we will have to rethink our decision whether this is the place to raise our family. This particular area, as you've heard, is incredibly close to these homes. I mean, we're talking tens of feet. And without the proper zoning, these commercial uses, the regional retail possibility, will continue to encroach and degrade the neighborhood and will negatively impact the entire city. It's not just a neighborhood issue, it will impact the whole city. It's also, this area is also a critical corridor between the athletic fields at Colley Stadium, which I spend way too much time at, and Shed Park. The neighborhood and the city have made a huge investment in the Shed Park to really make it a focal point. And it is, when we moved here, it was awful. It has really become a wonderful place, and it is really getting used by the community, and you see kids in groups riding and walking down there. The commercial development along this corridor should not be regional retail. I mean, that's a safety issue. If we really want that to be the neighborhood where kids can go and feel safe, they shouldn't be walking through a Home Depot parking lot to get there. And the reality is this area has never been regional retail. It's inappropriate, and this was highlighted by the Taco Bell issue we faced, and it has already been mentioned. But without the appropriate zoning ordinance protection, the neighborhood will again have to challenge each and every unsuitable project. And this is just an inappropriate burden on the neighborhood. The proposed amendment is an attempt to correct the zoning to match and preserve the current status. It will not impact the current businesses, and in many ways will provide more flexibility and potential, as the existing single-family structures and small lot sizes really are more a traditional mixed-use zone. There are about 150 different property uses defined. Only about 24 change. There's half are more restrictive and half are more permissive. All current uses would be grandfathered and would continue uninterrupted. What the amendment will prevent is another fast food chain who wants to put in a drive-through that will be open to 4 a.m. in someone's parking backyard. It will prevent the 18-wheeler supply trucks from being routed down Andover Street and Wentworth Avenue. It will prevent the consolidation of several parcels to provide the space that's needed for a very big retail store, because while the way those parcels are now doesn't mean that they're going to stay that way. We have someone who owns multiple parcels, maybe they can squeeze in a big box retail store there. So the amendment is hopefully going to prevent the very things that shouldn't be permitted. And any opposition from the current property owners, in my opinion, is just a confounding example of biting the hand that feeds you. The current businesses are not pulling customers off the highway, they're pulling from the neighborhood. And without the neighborhood support, these businesses do not survive, the rents are not paid, and the taxes do not come back to the city. I anticipate that there will be opposition to the amendment and an argument that the change will devalue the property in some way. I simply do not believe this is true, and any statistics that are submitted in support can be countered by statistics demonstrating the values actually increased. But of course, the council is already aware of all these statistics, that mixed use actually creates more revenue overall, which is better for everyone, the neighborhood, the businesses, and the city. This understanding is clearly evidenced and set forth in the plan, the city's comprehensive master sustainability plan. This analysis has already been done at great expense to the city. There is no need to delay and new further analysis regarding this. The master plan calls for commercial development to support the surrounding neighborhoods. It was the result of a 2-year extensive planning process with substantial public participation, data analysis, and data collection. I believe the council unanimously approved it. The proposed amendment clearly achieves the objectives of the plan. It's what the plan calls for. It's what the city council approved. It just makes sense. And finally, the residents of the city strongly support the amendment, as evidenced by the petition and the signatures and the emails and calls you've received. In my opinion, rejecting the amendment is another example of biting the hand that feeds you, and I strongly support the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Hi, my name is Celine Lehman. I'm at 213 Parkview Avenue, and I won't repeat many of the valid assessments of why this is a positive change, but I wanted to put my own voice in to say that I'm in favor of the change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name is Trina Picardi. I live at 151 Parkview. And like Celine, I won't go ahead and repeat everything that some of my neighbors in the neighborhood have said. I would like to say that I'm a founding member of Friends of Shed Park. No one appreciates more when the splash pad is full of kids than me after all of those hours. I'm also a member of the Greater Lowell Roadrunners, and I'm on the board of directors for the Bay State Marathon, which brings over 3,000 people into the city of Lowell, and I'll say from all over the world. We had a runner from Italy last year and England. So I'm very passionate about this city, and I spend a lot of my time volunteering here. I'd like to also mention that I go out of my way to shop locally, specifically on Rogers Street. I could very easily sit at home and just order my flowers from 1-800-Flowers and never leave my house, but I know I go down and I go to Belvedere Florist. I use Michelle Dry Cleaners probably more than I want to admit to, and I have a monthly dinner date with a neighbor where I pick up from Hong Kong Treasures. So I am one of those neighbors. I am spending my money down in this section of Rogers. The change that we're requesting tonight, I believe, should be viewed as a correction. The 625 yards of Rogers Street is not suitable for big box retailers, hotels, motels, or processing plants, yet that is how it's currently zoned. What exists now, residences, small locally owned businesses, and senior housing is by the definition provided in Article 3 titled Establishments, Traditional Mixed Use. So tonight I ask that the council approve and correct the zoning oversight by rezoning this section Traditional Mixed Use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor?
Good evening. My name is Richard Coffey. I live at 331 Parkview Avenue, which is abutting the proposed area for rezoning. And I'm very much in favor of this. Your vote to make this change will support neighborhoods, and that improves the city. That's the basic message. Vibrant neighborhoods, livable neighborhoods, that's what a city is all about. And we had that there many years ago. We've continued it. We've had some incursions. Sometime around 2000, 2005, there was a master rezoning plan. And by some, if you remember laughing, remember the fickle finger and laughing? Well, here it is. This is an incursion into a residential area. If you look at your map, you'll see that, you know, out of Rogers Street, regional retail, good decision. But this is just sticking in there in the midst of houses. The silliness of this is, for instance, that there are now houses that are non-conforming in a neighborhood. All right, we're in a neighborhood, the houses there are non-conforming because they're on land that's now regional retail. This is silly. All right, this needs to be corrected. All the things that the people have said about, you know, local businesses, wonderful. We love the local businesses. You know, I used to be able to send my children down to the store to get milk. Didn't even have to cross the street. It's wonderful to have those local businesses there, and we support them. And this change is not going to hurt that. It's going to enhance that. So we're asking you to help us in our neighborhood, and basically, you support the neighborhoods, you improve the city. Please do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
George Theodoro, 133 Market Street. Attorney George Theodoro, representing POTA Stylus, the owner of 683 Rogers Street. I think I'm going to get right to what I heard about the master plan and everything that, you know, I had a number of other things to say, but I think it's important to get this out, is that this city did conduct an extensive study. They studied the zoning of all the neighborhoods in the city. They studied the commercial retail areas throughout the city, and they formulated a detailed master plan. And that master plan did not change the zoning for this corridor of Rogers Street. That master plan that was enacted by the members of this council maintained the regional retail zoning for Rogers Street. And I called this out of the master plan, and it has the economic priority areas. And I have a little check mark over here. Says the corner of Phoenix Ave and Rogers Street is slated for an economic development priority area. And that is slated as a regional retail area. Now, this is a master plan that you recently approved. There's a dangerous precedent that's going on in the city right now. And the neighborhood organization, and I compliment the neighborhood organizations to do their due diligence and do their work on this. However, what we have right now is they're carving out a section and making it sound like regional retail are like the Martians that are landing and taking over their neighborhoods. If you permit this zoning ordinance to be enacted, then you will permit this neighborhood organization to carve out a section of zoning and change it. And this is after you've done an extensive study in the city. This is after you have enacted this master plan. So this is going to create a dangerous precedent and wants to stop another neighborhood organization that doesn't like a retail area that abuts a residential neighborhood from going ahead and changing and attempting to change the zoning and trying to have the council enact another ordinance. There's no question that by enacting this ordinance, you're going to diminish the value of the properties there. I think what we have going on here, the bantering is contradiction. Yes, we are, no, we aren't. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. 683 Rogers Street right now is a two-family home. It has the benefits of being in a regional retail zone, and it has rights that are associated, development rights, if they so choose to use them, in a regional retail zone. Those rights will be diminished and terminated if this council takes an action and enacts the zoning ordinance. And I'm going to have to tell you that everyone else involved in it, if they go ahead and they do any extensive studies with appraisals and whatnot and commercial appraisals, that their property is going to be worth a lot more as a regional retail area than if you change it to a traditional mixed use. Now, you had everybody talk about what's happening with Taco Bell. And I've heard that. They wanted to stop it. They don't want to go through it again. And this is a measure that they've enacted, so this could never happen again. So you'll never have there a retail establishment or a restaurant of over 5,000 square feet, because if you enact this, you're not going to be able to develop that as a matter of right. You're going to have to go through an extensive, you're going to have to get a special permit from the Board of Appeals, and that's another control measure. That's something that's going to diminish the value of everyone's property. You also heard about what they had to go through to stop the Taco Bell. They objected at the planning board process, and I have to submit to you that there are controls in place right now that this city has through the planning board process that every developer has to go through the process and through the strict scrutiny of the planning board and meet the criteria. And if they do, fine. They pass the muster, they have their development. If they don't, it'll happen just like it happened with Taco Bell. They denied it. So these controls are in place. But if you allow a neighborhood organization to come in and say they're going to change the zoning because they don't like regional retail, that's wrong. Every zoning ordinance that is passed by a body has to have a purpose. And what's the purpose of this? They say to protect the neighborhoods. How is this harming the neighborhood? What's the data on that? How is it harming it? They're already saying that they're using it. They're almost hanging that over the head of the retail users here that they're going to, bite the hand that feeds them. I mean, what kind of, is that being a good neighbor? I don't think so. But we have a master plan that's enacted by the city. They studied the zoning there extensively. It says right here, and again, it's pointed out, Rogers Ave and Phoenix Ave slated for economic development in a regional retail zone. There's no valid reason for this city council to change the zoning there. By allowing this residential community to carve up the zoning here, you are doing, in a small way right now, eroding a commercial tax base. This council owes it to the residents of this city to protect the commercial property owners and the tax revenue that they generate. And they're not generated by the neighborhood and the residential community in that specific section. So the only action I ask you to take is to do the right thing, be vigilant, and vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is David Plunkett. I have a law office at Warren Street in Lowell, here representing Sage Bank. Sage Bank, formerly known as Lowell Cooperative Bank, also previously doing business as Lowell Bank. The bank has been a major presence in the city of Lowell for over 100 years. Listen to the comments of those in support, just want to say that we're not here, the bank is strongly opposed to this proposal, not in an adversarial nature to the proponents, but because of the perspective of what makes sense from a zoning perspective, what makes sense from a business perspective. You've heard indications saying, well, this won't have any substantial effect on the value of the property. It will have substantial effect on the value of the property when you go through all the use charts and see all the changes that are made going from the TMU, from the RR to the TMU. You have a situation where there are a number of uses of right which are now eliminated. You have to look at all the charts. You have a situation where the bank right now is located at the corner of Phoenix Avenue and Rogers Street. Now again, the perspective of the bank, Sage Bank is a major player in the city. They're a major benefactor to the Merrimack Regional Theater. They've been having great success, expanding. They have offices on 18 Hurd Street, 15 Hurd Street, the office on Rogers Street. They have the mortgage origination office on off of the towers. They have office space in the Warren Street, the Gateway 2 building. They've become a source of employment. They've been a source of contributing to the city. But when they look at this, they look at it from the business perspective. That you have situations here with the proposed change, things that have significant impact upon the use. Looking at something that that the proponents may overlook, but is a major impact in terms of lighting. The ability to have internally illuminated lights, moving signs, things of that sort. That's not allowed in the TMU. That has a major impact on an operation such as the bank. The signage, the ability to have visibility and get across messages and things of that sort. That would also have a significant impact, even to say, oh, well, they're grandfathered. But they're grandfathered limited to what they have right now. If they want to expand, change, or do anything of that sort, they would have to come in and get variances. They would have to go and be put through a process that they're not required to right now. The trade-off when I was at the planning board meeting, part of the rationale was, well, you know what, but you're going to get an increase in value of the property because now you have potential residential use that you don't have under the regional retail. But look at this section and say, is that truly an advantage? The bank's property is located at the corner of Rogers Street and Phoenix Avenue. Phoenix Avenue is the access to light industrial area immediately adjacent behind the bank's property. On the other side of Phoenix Avenue is a gasoline station. On the opposite side of Rogers Street is Milan Pizza. I would suggest that saying, oh, well, you're going to get an increase in value because now you can have residential use. The bank has done a thorough analysis of this and said that that really is not a value. That zoning change is meaningless to the bank from the perspective of their location on Rogers Street, which is properly zoned for regional retail, for the use that is there. Again, in addition to the changes in the zoning, you look at the dimensional requirements. Dimensional requirements in terms of the height allowance. There's no limitation in the regional retail. There is a limitation of 45 feet in the TMU. You have a number of other matters that are now permitted uses of right in the regional retail that would require special permit in the TMU. You have rights that you can utilize the certain uses that require special permit in the regional retail, which are now not allowed in the TMU. You have to look at all the charts, you have to look at all the uses, and then you have to look at the site and say what makes sense from a zoning perspective. Can understand the people in the neighborhood saying they want protection. I've been a member of a planning board for 18 years. Take it very seriously. I've sat with members of the city council, Councilor Mercia, Councilor Laurie, the mayor, Mayor Murphy. We've sat together on the regional planning at the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. I know how seriously planning boards take what is bestowed upon them in terms of protecting rights in neighborhoods. And it sounds like, and I've dealt with the Lowell Planning Board, and I know how great a planning board you have. I've seen those members in work. I've dealt with them also on the regional planning. I've been before them. I know how diligent they are. I know how they take their responsibility also. And it sounds like they did a very good job when there was a conflict, between what might have been allowed in the regional retail at a spot that was in conflict with an abutting residential property. And they said no. So it doesn't make sense then to take this area, which is clearly commercial, and change it from an area that now is going to change all potential uses to potential special permit use, and make it a non-use, and you will substantially decrease the value of the property. So I'm here on behalf of the bank. The bank, again, it's not saying that the adversarial to the neighborhood can understand it, but you have to look at it from a business perspective. You have to look at it from the perspective of the intent of zoning. What makes sense? And I would suggest taking a property that's bounded by light industrial, a roadway has access to light industrial, opposite the gasoline station, opposite a pizza restaurant, which are, great businesses to have, and say, oh, well, we're going to make you TMU, but don't worry about all those changes we've made in your potential use of the property, because now you could use it for residential purposes. It doesn't make sense. And again, the bank is very happy to be here in the city of Lowell. They've been here for many, many years, have been a great participant in city activities, and hopes to have continued success and expansion, but we really look to the council to take a very close look at this, take a look at all the use charts, take a look at all the dimensional changes, take a look at even the incidentals such as lighting and signage, and see the impact that this would have, and realize that there is no need, because of the fact, as you sit right now, your planning board can protect through this special permit process with their discretionary powers, and they have done that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, Mr. Manager, and all those in the chamber. My name is Dr. Louis Stylis. I'm here with my wife, Lisa Stylis, and I'm also representing my mother on a personal basis, Poda Stylis, who lives at 683 Roger Street. I grew up on Roger Street, less than 6 months. I was 6 months old when I went into that door, at least I'm told. I lived there till 1994. And other than going to college, pretty much that's home. In 1998, I moved to Holyrood, 24 Holyrood Avenue with my wife, because we believed in this city. And if you had told me that 40 years ago when I was walking out of an alumni Lowell High assembly that I would be back a half a mile from my parents, I would have told you were crazy. But nonetheless, I'm thrilled that we did make that decision. My parents bought that place before there was anything there. And they worked through and lived through the entire time. My dad passed away in 2008. My mom is still there. She's 85 years old. And they knew that it was an asset that they had. And that's why they stayed there. They're the only, my mother is the only owner-occupied residence on that street. She chooses to stay there. She's going to stay there till she passes. And based on what her doctor said at her checkup last month, she's on paper could live to 100. And I hope that's the case, and I hope she exceeds that. So her intent here is that this is an asset that she and my father worked very hard to maintain and to keep. They paid taxes there since 1957. They've seen all those changes, and yet they feel that that is something that at this point now wants to pass on to their children and grandchildren. It's their legacy. My father worked for the Boston and Maine Railroad, spent 17 hours usually getting up and going to work so that he could buy this place. My mother worked in the Demoulas meat market department and then at Capitol. They put a lot of sweat and equity to buy this house, and their wishes were now to pass it on to their children and grandchildren. It is one of the things that has not been said is that there's talk about cooperation and making everybody involved in this process. I'm here to tell you that other than a couple of sharp eyes in the room that picked out the public announcement, we had no idea that this has been an ongoing months, year-long, it sounds like 2-year-long process. Nobody called my mother. Nobody wrote a letter to my mother. Nobody offered to find out what my mother's input was on this, what comes out to be a zoning change. Somebody that's paid taxes since 1957 there at least deserves a knock on the door. So I will tell you that this was not a process that included the stakeholders. And when we found out about this, and when I talked to the fellow property owners on Rogers Street, they all were shocked at this. They had no idea. I will tell you that there is something wrong with the notification process and the development process with this, when the people that are most affected by this are not involved at all. And there may be this piece in the paper that's published, come to our meeting, or there's a public hearing, but that's an outdated form of notification. A lot of people don't get the paper. My mother can barely read the paper now, okay? And that was the only thing that we received from the city was a reprint of the public hearing for tonight in an envelope, and there was nobody has come to my mother or to any other property owners and said, this is why this is a good thing for you. I will tell you, I've talked with many realtors and developers. Nobody has said that this is going to increase the value of your property. They've all said that this will decrease the value of the property. I will tell you that the safeguards are already in place to protect unwarranted or unconforming projects. They're already in place. This has been in place since the beginning of the planning. I will say that the City Council should and is aware that on June 17th, the Planning and Zoning Board voted no action on this. And the reason why they did that, in part, was because nobody in the regional retail district was involved at all. So there were a number of points made by Attorney Theodoro and Attorney Plunkett, so I'm not going to review that, but to me, this as an act of fairness, this is not something that will dramatically change the zoning that's been in place for a long time and it's working, should not be passed, especially without the stakeholders most affected by it not even being involved in the process. This is legislation without representation. And I urge the City Council to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name is Dr. Daniel Brennan. I live at 8 Mansfield Road, and I have a dental practice at 674 Rogers Street. in the district we're talking about. I just want to go on record as opposing the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. My name is Dominic Intravaya. I'm a trustee for GIM Properties Realty Trust, and we have property at 590 and 638 Rogers Street. When we purchased that property, we saw that it was zoned regional retail, so we paid a little more money for it. By changing the zoning law to traditional mixed use, it would devaluate the property, which in turn might give the city less taxes. And I don't think the city wants that. And talking to Aaron Clausen, he works for the planning board administration, whatever, he's a manager there. He says there's nothing planned. If there's nothing planned, let's leave well enough alone. When something is planned, then it's up to you people of the city council to say if you want to allow it or disallow it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name's Richard Barrett. I live at 39 Whitehead Ave, and I own Kilkenny Pub at 660 Rogers Street. Both properties are in this district that you're looking to change, and I just want to say that I'd like you to leave it the way it is. It's been a business zone for 50 years, and it's going to be business for another 50 years, and I think there's enough regulations in place, as they proved with the Taco Bell, to keep the zoning the way it is. Thank you very much for considering this.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. My name's Martha Barrett. I'm Richard's sister. I live at 250 Nesmith Street in Lowell. I'm opposed to this change in the amendment. I'd be reiterating what the other attorneys and everyone has said this evening, but it would limit my brother's ability as a business owner, and it would limit other people's ability that are property owners on that street. I have lived on Nesmith Street since 2008. My brother's been in business for approximately 12 years, and I'm fortunate to have a fantastic relationship with my brother. And a couple points that have been brought up this evening I would like to make note of. I walk to see my brother pretty much every day. I come out of Nesmith Street and I take a right some days, and I walk up Mansa, and I come all the way down through the neighborhood to the back door of the business. When I leave, I walk down Rogers Street. I pass Jilly's, I pass these various other businesses, and I successfully cross the street at the lights at Shed Park, and I walk by Shed Park, and at the lights again, I cross and I continue home. It's a safe, walkable neighborhood. People were opposed to Taco Bell, and they successfully kept Taco Bell out. And there are measures in effect that they can keep out other businesses in the future. So it should remain as it is. And in a final note, I must say that I resent hearing that it's only the neighborhood that comes into Kilkenny Pub. I'm proud to say that my brother has customers from the age of 21 to 94. And there are various days that I'm there and people are pulling into the parking lot, going down to the auditorium or other events, and they have come in for a meal. So it is not just the neighborhood. And certainly the neighborhood helps, but we do get business from other areas as well. And on a final note, I will say that it's unfortunate. I understand there is growth in the city, and it affects people in the neighborhood. However, the last thing I would like to say is, before I bought on Nesmith Street, I found another house, and I was so excited, and I called my brother, and I called my father, and they were both over there, and all of a sudden my father said, "Wait for it." And I said, "What am I waiting for?" And then I heard it. The train went through the backyard, and my father said, "Martha, it's a lesson. Buyer beware." Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name is Ernest Tavares. I live in 44 Wayside Lane in Lowell. I've lived there in the same residence for 50 years. Wayside Lane is located right off of Clark Road. My feeling is that this motion should be rejected. And the only way that I can, there's so many controls in place that would take care of any problems. And going down Rogers Street right now is smooth sailing. And if this amendment goes through, it's kind of like putting speed bumps on Rogers Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition?
Hi, I'm Ed Hogan from 661 Rogers Street. We're a commercial property owner. I just want to say that we're opposed to it. We feel it will lower the value of the properties in the area. Possibly by lowering the value, it might even hurt the area because people would be less likely to invest and improve in our building and other businesses in the area. So I just want to go on record as saying we're opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did receive a lot of petitions in favor of the ordinance to rezone, and people opposed to the ordinance being rezoned. So I'd like to submit both in an effort of fairness as part of the record, all these petitions, both for and against. Having said that, gee, just when you felt like you supported one side, then the other side came by and you kind of saw both sides. But for the record, I will say that it troubles me greatly when those that are involved in a situation the most are kept in the dark and out of the loop. And that's not what government should be about. This troubles me more than anything I heard tonight, that the very people that are affected by this change were not even notified. That in itself is wrong. I don't know how we correct that, but as a council, we try to make rules and ordinances that says the immediate area of whatever's affected, people should be notified. We try to do that, and I don't know how this slipped through the cracks, or maybe, but my number one question before I say any more is, how did we get to this point right here? Why are we here? Who decided that this needed to be changed in the first place? Is there a reason for it? Because from what I'm understanding, nobody said that there's an eminent company coming in to build a big, massive commercial piece of property. And I want you to know that I frequent all those businesses myself. That's my neighborhood. I enjoy a bank. I enjoy a gas station. I enjoy the Belvedere Florist. I do frequent all these places. It's nice to have this all along. So I can argue both ways here, but I want to know, why are we here? What is the purpose of this whole thing, Mr. Manager?
If I may,
Mr. Manager.
I'm going to ask Mr. Bakey to sort of give a historical perspective here.
Good evening, everyone. This, frankly, is a little unusual in terms of a zoning amendment coming before this council, at least in the time that I've been here before with the city. So it's quite an appropriate question to ask. The planning board members, I guess over the last several months, at the tail end of a number of their meetings, have informally discussed amongst themselves the zoning in this area, and that culminated in a meeting earlier this spring when the planning board, again on their own, elected to vote unanimously to recommend or to submit this zoning amendment to the council. And under the Mass General Law, one of the bodies that has the authority to introduce zoning amendments, if they so wish to do so, is the planning board. And so as a result of that formal vote that they took, we, as the administrators of the planning board, had no choice but to work with the law department to bring it to you as an amendment That's what started this process and how it started through this process.
Okay, Mr. Bakey, so please stop right there. The very body that is telling us, that is telling everyone that we're going to change this, has just given us a recommendation, a communication that we placed on file that voted 5-0, that they can't make a determination until they get another piece of this puzzle. And then yet it's before us, like we should make a determination when the very people that started it can't make a determination. So I would move, since the public hearing was already formed here and commenced, and that was the end of it, that we hold our vote in abeyance until they step up to the plate and tell us where they stand on this issue. Then I'll make a better determination. Whether I'm for it or against it is yet to be seen. But I'm not going to be willing to subject my colleagues to make a vote on something that they started and they can't even make a determination and give us a recommendation because there's a piece missing here. So that's where I stand with this. I make a motion that we hold the vote in abeyance, and I don't want to put everybody else into another state of, oh my God, we're waiting. But I can't make a determination until they do. I want to see what they have to say. They're the ones that started this, not us. I just want to say a key piece of this where Taco Bell is a key issue here, the way that it's zoned, and the people didn't want that, and the people heard that, and it didn't come. So having said that, I don't know, I'm not a professional here, but I hear value of property. People have paid a specific amount of money on the value of their property and have it to turn back to lose value. That's the key factor here that I want to know. And I want to hear what the planning board has to say, because that's what they're saying. They're saying that they voted to recommend to us to not take any action on the proposed zoning amendment until the impact of property value for commercial and residential use is further evaluated. I do too. I want to hear that. I don't want them to get out of this. I want them to make a determination one way or another before I decide that I'm going to do it.
Motion by Councilor Mercier. Is there a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion, but I have some questions of my own, so.
Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Martin. Councilor Martin on the motion.
All right. First is later, the planning board recommendation was further up on the agenda. Further down, we have a petition by Attorney Theodorou, which it might be a good idea to hear what that's all about now, if that's acceptable to members of the council.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Take that up now.
By Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilman Donza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We have under general petitions, miscellaneous petition by Attorney George Theodoro.
That petition is made...
Sorry, I'll finish reading it and then we'll get into it. Miscellaneous petition by Attorney George Theodoro. Petition protesting the proposed ordinance for rezoning of Rogers Street.
That petition is made specifically with respect to the statute, Chapter 48, Section 5, in which 20% of the property owners affected by the proposed zoning ordinance, if they file a written petition with this body prior to the final vote, then it requires a 3/4 vote rather than a 2/3 vote. So this specifically was done procedurally, that if it were to pass, it would require the council to have 7 votes in favor of the ordinance.
And this was in everyone's packet.
Okay. All right. So I thought it was important for us to hear that. My other question is...
Before we move back to that discussion, I would entertain then a motion to accept and place on file that petition. So moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mercier. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Returning then back to the...
So I know I've made kind of an issue in the past about...
Mr. Solicitor?
The petition that was filed is a nullity because it failed to state the reasons within the petition by the persons who signed it. And there's a case that holds Parisi versus the City of Gloucester, decided by the Massachusetts Appeals Court in 1975, which is still valid law, which says that unless the petition itself states the reasons for opposition within the signed petition, that it is a nullity and it is unrecognized by the courts.
Then in that case, Mr. Solicitor, we're able to file another petition prior to the council taking a final vote.
Well, you're asking about tonight, if there would be a vote tonight. I'm saying that that would be the status of it, yes. It would require only a 2/3 vote at this instance.
Councilor Martin.
So, all right, so my point was, I'm not usually a fan of delay, right? I mean, people are down here tonight, and I appreciate the speakers on both sides. I think, there are certainly people that are very passionate about the neighborhood, and they want to see this process through. There are landowners here with vested interests who are very, I think, justified in their positions as well. However, it does seem to be unfairness in a process where, the landowners are just brought in at the very tail end. And I know the planning board in their last action on this did vote to send notice to the affected landowners. And so I think that's an appropriate action for the planning board to take. Maybe would have been better to do it at the beginning of the process as opposed to the end. But we've spent considerable time here over the last 3, 4, 5 years increasing notification requirements, requiring signs to go up on development sites, requiring local notice for approval not required plans, everything sort of geared toward getting the maximum input possible from the affected parties. And yet here, the most affected party of all, the people that own the property, really didn't have much opportunity. So, so even though I'm not really a fan of the delay and think people that come down here and speak deserve a vote, in light of that comment, in light of the planning board recommendation that no action be taken, and in light of the fact, my last question to Mr. Fenton, if no action is taken within a certain period of time, this just goes away, right? I mean, it would need to be re-advertised, start the process over.
Yeah, after the public hearing before the council, unless the council acts on it within 90 days, then it has to be re-advertised and started over again, as you indicate.
So, I mean, that's still got some time to run here, but, I think in light of those circumstances, the Councilor Mercier's motion may be appropriate in this circumstance. So, again, I want to have some of those questions answered before I commented on the motion, but I don't oppose that action at this time. I'll wait to hear from other members of the council.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Kennedy, then Councilor Elliott.
If we could just go on a little bit about the historical part of how we got here, Mr. Bickey. If this petition for the zoning change initiated within the planning board, how did it come that the planning board came up with no recommendation? I mean, how did they initiate that, and then how did that happen? How did that evolve? And besides that, when was Taco Bell, and how did Taco Bell play into this whole thing?
Okay. I don't have the specific dates on Taco Bell, but I believe it was about a year or so before. There was a proposal to redevelop a property in this area with a Taco Bell that would have a drive-through. Because it had a proposed drive-through, it required a special permit, which was a discretionary permit that was before the boards, and the boards ultimately denied that discretionary permit for that project, so it was not able to go forward. However, in reaction to that, I believe that was the incident that started the planning board members having discussions among themselves about whether there should even be the possibility of that special permit in this area in the event that some future project it might be granted. So they decided at that point that ultimately, after bringing it up a number of times, they actually took a formal vote again this spring to introduce this zoning amendment, which is how it got here. I will not even attempt to speculate as to what their thinking process was that caused them to change from a unanimous recommendation to bring this forward to a unanimous recommendation to take no action in the space of a couple of months. But obviously, that's something they would have to answer for themselves.
Did they have a public hearing?
They did, yes. And it was after the public hearing that they changed. Perhaps what they heard at the public hearing influenced their opinion of the matter.
Do you know whether or not their public hearing was well attended?
I do know that there were a number of folks who, I was not present at it, but I do understand that there was, I believe, one individual who spoke in favor, perhaps representing others, I'm not sure, and a number of individuals who spoke in opposition, but it was not as well attended, certainly in terms of participation, as this evening.
And it's my understanding that there's no requirement to inform the people or property owners within the designated area that there's a zoning change before the municipality?
Well, that's actually a little bit of a gray area in this case. The City Council some time ago adopted an amendment to our zoning code that required that when there is a map change, that in the event that that map change is brought in by a private party or a property owner, that the notification be sent out in a manner similar to if a private party is seeking or needs to go before one of the boards for a specific development proposal. Notification must be sent to all of the abutters. There is, however, a clause in there that says that in the event that it is a project or a map change that's initiated by a public project, essentially by the city, that notice requirement may be met in other ways. And the reasoning behind that is that, and again, I indicated that this was an unusual circumstance. Typically, if there is a map change that's brought forward by the city, the planning board, the city administration, or members of the city council, it is in conjunction with and subsequent to a planning process. And it is usually to implement the recommendations of a planning process. And when we do a planning process, we essentially always have a pretty heavy level of engagement with the community that would be impacted by that process. And so as a result, there was a question as to whether it would be redundant to do the notification in those circumstances. What's challenging, and why I say this one was perhaps a gray area with respect to the planning board hearing, is while it was brought in by a public entity, the planning board, there was no planning process behind it to substitute for the public notice that would otherwise occur. As a consequence of that, they realized at their own public hearing that perhaps notice should be more broadly given, and we administratively arranged to send notice not just to everybody who was in the area, but also notice to everyone within 300 feet of the area for purposes of this meeting this evening, so that people would be aware that there was a public hearing prior to, again, the council taking any definitive action to change the zoning.
So are you saying that it kind of fell through the cracks, but then the city did send notice? I've talked to other people that are property owners within this district who said they didn't receive any notice. Notices
were sent out, I believe, about 2 weeks ago about this hearing right here this evening.
Okay. To everybody that...
Again, it was sent to everyone who was in fact, one of the speakers this evening described the notice that they received. Those notices were sent to all the people in the impacted area, as well as to the abutters to the impacted area. Again, consistent with the provision of our zoning code that, again, had this been a private petition, would have been implemented from the beginning.
Okay, and so how did it get to the city council then? If the planning board supported this, then they had a public hearing. And then after their public hearing, they voted not to support it, to just take no action, or to recommend no action. But before the public hearing, then the matter came before the city council, so we were running concurrent with the planning board's process, is that?
Yeah, the zoning in Massachusetts is perhaps unduly cumbersome bureaucratically. The way the process works, whoever the entity is, and there's a list of folks who are eligible to submit zoning amendments, one of whom is the planning board, which was what was the case in this case. That gets submitted to the city council in the case of a city. And the city council then refers it two places, refers it to the planning board, because in some cases it isn't the planning board that brings it in the first place, so that the planning board can hold a hearing and following the hearing make a report and recommendation to the council. It's a non-binding recommendation, so the council obviously should pay attention to it, but doesn't have to adhere to it. It's up to the council whether they feel that's appropriate or not. But they also, the council in that initial hearing of the matter also refers it to a public hearing before the council. Now, historically, some number of years ago, the sort of standard practice in Lowell was that the council would wait until they received the report and recommendation from the planning board before the council would even schedule its own public hearing. And the reason that some years ago we changed that process is because we realized, especially in the summertime, that when that was happening, there was not enough time to properly advertise the council hearing and hold the council hearing and meet the statutory requirement that the council hearing and the planning board hearing both take place within a certain number of days of when the amendment was first introduced to the council, again, that first instance. So as a result, the process was changed so that the council set its own public hearing at the same time as it was sending it out to the planning board, and we arranged to make sure that the date of your hearing is sufficiently after the planning board's hearing that you will have their report and recommendation that night, as you did this evening with this case.
Thanks.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank both the neighborhood groups and the business owners for coming down here tonight. We regularly look at amendments primarily after the fact when something has taken place in a neighborhood that is not conducive to the character or to what the neighbors think, and we vote amendments and to change it so it won't happen again. I appreciate the fact that the city did send out notices, but this is before us. You know, this amendment came before us. I'm not sure how or why, but it's before us. And it's before us to make a decision. Do we want to change the zoning for the reasons presented by proponents, or do we not? So when things come before us, I think we should make a decision. I don't know what the report is going to, or when a report will come back on if there is any impact on property values. That's kind of like a moving target as far as I'm concerned. So I'm prepared to vote on this tonight. I'm prepared to vote and to support the amendment as it's submitted. When there's a zoning problem, we need to fix it. And in my opinion, people in the neighborhood who live there, who travel through the business district every day, who pay taxes, who decided to make that neighborhood their home, who frequent and support the businesses in that neighborhood, they shouldn't have to feel, and I feel this way about any zone in any neighborhood. They shouldn't have to worry about, well, I heard there's a development coming through, we got to rally the troops, we got to go down to Zoning Board of Appeals and oppose it. I don't believe that's the way that the zoning code is set up or should be set up. You know, variances or special permits are for special conditions. And if we know, and if the neighborhood knows, if the planning board knows that there could be a potential problem, then residents shouldn't have to live in fear. And I firmly believe that. If there's a fix to it, let's put it, and let's put the fix to it now. And it is before us tonight. So while I can appreciate, we want to, you know, I don't want to say it's, you know, to some degree it's kicking the can. You know, we've heard this a lot in this chamber, we're kicking the can. This is just kicking the can. The neighbors, the neighborhood, they have come together, they understand the zone, they've looked at the master plan, we adopted the master plan, and there are some changes to the zoning code that we need to make sometimes, and I believe this is one of them. If we do want to, as as the zoning code, or, excuse me, the master plan has put, if we want to preserve neighborhood character, this is a quality of life issue for those people that live in the neighborhood. They're not opposed to commercial, to commercial or businesses in that area. They just want some protection. They don't want the big boxes. And let's face it, chances are, maybe it will happen. That seems to be the trend. They want the small businesses. They want to frequent those those neighborhood businesses, and I support them. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to vote in that manner.
Any further discussion? Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have questions for the Mr. Becky. Mr. Becky, in a regional retail permit required for fast food and retail stores, that's what we have now, right, sir?
Well, the special permit that was required under the current zoning was for the drive-through
Right.
Use. The actual use is of a restaurant greater than 5,000 square feet would have been a by right use, but the drive-through required a special permit.
Will this change in zoning impact the current, fast food and or big retail in place now?
No change in zoning of this nature affects the existing uses. They are all grandfathered as pre-existing non-conforming uses. But in the event that somebody wants to redevelop a property, they would have to do so consistent with whatever the zoning that was in place at that time was. So if the zoning were changed, they would have to use the TMU. If the zoning were not changed, they would have to use the rules of the regional retail.
Right. Thank you. What makes sense is to correct what, the current zoning, because really, I understand that a number of business in the areas, or people who own a property along Roger Street, they want to opportunity to put in, if they were to sell the places, to a big retail store or a big fast food to come in the areas, and I don't think this, the area can handle that. I think the TMU is the most appropriate or the correct use for this area, based on we're talking about the park, and the traffic area and the safety, and certainly this is going to change the the neighborhood characters. With that said, I think, I do concur with Councilor Elliott, that is, we need to put things in places to protect the neighborhood and to correct ourselves. I mean, and it's no shame to say we overlook, and now it's time to correct it. Thank you.
Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I've been getting calls from both sides. I have friends on both sides. Since I've been on the council, and I've said this to some of the neighborhood people, I've backed the neighborhoods every time, because what has happened, there was an intrusion as they saw it into their neighborhood. Tonight, there's no intrusion. Tonight, a city board took it upon themselves to make a problem. That's how I see it. A city board sat down and said, we know what's best for the neighborhood. Now, I don't want to drive through in my backyard, and I would have been down there fighting it too. But no one's putting in a drive-through tonight. They tried to, they lost. I look at Centerville over on Bridge Street, where a couple of people tried to come in and force their way in. A neighborhood group fought it. Not only did they fight it successfully, but then they came in and sat down with the neighbors, and you have some great businesses over there, and I commend both parties. I'll be honest, I saw a little bit of the meeting at the end, and I think the most important thing I saw one board member say is, no one who's for the change is affected by the change. I look at this letter, and and I hear what Mr. Bakey had to say, and I'm wondering if after the Taco Bell, the planning board, and we have a great board, said, you know, we could probably change it this way and make it work, but they never notified the people who are gonna be affected the most. And it seems when they came back before the board put the brakes on very darn quick and voted 5-0 to hold up. I agree with Councilor Martin. I usually don't like to delay action. I don't even see a problem personally going TMU. There's a lot of homes in that area. But the problem is, it seems this process has been flawed from the beginning. It wasn't started by either party who's going to be affected. And now, here we are sitting in the middle of this fight. I think I'm going to support Councilor Mercier's motion to let the board come back, look at it, and maybe if they see there is a property value change, they may think differently. I don't know what that board's going to think. I really don't even have a problem going to TMU. I don't know if it will affect the property values in that area. If it does, I don't want to hurt those people either. But it seemed that this process has been somehow flawed from the beginning, only because the people who were involved the most really weren't involved, and they weren't even notified to the end. But yet I can see the neighborhood group. I don't want to drive through in my, and I'd be down there fighting it too. I heard tonight that the process is in place, that if a fast food restaurant wanted to come, and I don't know if that's true, Mr. Bakey, if a fast food restaurant or someone did want to come and open up till 4 in the morning, is there a process they would have to go through?
It's quite likely. Certainly, if a fast food restaurant were interested in a drive-through, and it's very rare that a fast food restaurant isn't interested in a drive-through.
They all are.
They would need the same special permit process that the Taco Bell sought. It is, I suppose, conceivable that someone under the current zoning could want to open a restaurant, as many restaurants exist in that area today, that do not have drive-throughs. That could conceivably occur by right, but there are a lot of other factors that might trigger a public involvement process, ranging from the parking lot design to signage to various other things that might cause the public to be invited to and participate in a public hearing about the project.
Okay. You know, I look at Roger Street. I used to be the mailman down there too. I don't see a reason for a business to be open after 11 o'clock there. And as I heard most of the people who live in that area say they frequent the businesses, and I believe they do. And I don't see the need for a drive-through open from 3 or 4 in the morning in that area. But I think I'm going to support Councilor Mercier's motion. I'd like to see what the board, you know, if they really did bring this forward and start it on their own, let them bring the parties together, listen to both parties. They may very well be right, TMU is probably the way to go, but they should include the owners of the property on 38, and maybe if we do have a few weeks of a cooling off period, the two sides can come together and maybe talk and move this forward. I think I'm just going to support Councilor Mercier at this point and see what the board has to say about this. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Listening to both sides tonight, get the janitor up here, I spilled my water. I can see both sides. I'm willing to support Councilor Mercier's motion to wait. I think this process has been flawed from the beginning. But I think as a solution from listening to both sides tonight too, an alternative motion could always be brought up. And I mean, it doesn't have to go TMU all the way down to Douglas Road. It is more commercial or retail up to the mini mall at 638 and across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts down. And listen to the speakers here, maybe except for one. I mean, most people are looking for the TMU use from from Parkview Street up, where the neighborhood actually, you know, more of the neighborhood feel is, and more of the commercial feel down could stay R&R. So I'm willing to wait, but I think that would be a good compromise. Since we're here, we have to make a decision. I think that's something that we should look at.
Council Laurie?
Very quickly, and I forgot to ask Mr. Bakey this question. Is there any projects on the books now on Roger Street that may come forward in this time period?
You mean, are there any private developments that have submitted? I don't believe that there's anything in this area that's been submitted to any of the boards at the moment.
No, that Taco Bell, I do remember that, and it was bad. And before I supported Councilor Mercia, I wanted to make sure there was nothing on the books now that could slide in and cause a problem for the residents. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Councilor Mercia's motion? Councilman Donson?
Yeah, I'm disturbed a bit by the process this has followed, in that I've been pushing for more notification of abutters that where these things were going to happen. And apparently there was a loophole here that prevented that from happening, and that concerns me. It also concerns me that the planning board itself that's bringing this forward voted 5-0 against it, essentially, is what's coming forward before us, without this other information being presented, which I haven't received yet. I've heard stories about it might go up, might go down. I have my own idea about what the values of these properties will do if this were to pass. And so, I mean, if I had to vote right now, I would vote not to change it. There's too much of a split within the neighborhood, and these property owners on Roger Street are in the neighborhood. They are part of the neighborhood, and they do not agree. I mean, if this came before us in a different light, that there was a developer asking to redevelop a lot and asking for zoning change, and the neighbors came out against the zoning change, then I would likely support them. I have in the past. But right now, the people that are most impacted are the commercial property owners along Roger Street. And every one of them that has spoken or sent us an email is opposed to the change. And I tend to agree with them. This change will take away their rights. It would reduce their property values because they would have less rights and be more restricted on what they could do with the property. I'll go ahead and support the delay to see if we get any additional information. But if I had to vote tonight, I would be against changing it simply because there's no consensus on the change. And as I look at that neighborhood, if we voted this change, we would making most of those properties non-conforming. I mean, part of the zoning is to look at its current use and try to be consistent with it, not necessarily future use. It's already used as commercial. It's already, for by and large, regional retail. There's maybe one house that's still residential. There's plazas, there's fast food restaurants, there's a gas station. It's all already commercial. And as even the proponents of the change have stated, a lot of these lots really aren't deep enough. Even if they combined them along Roger Street, they're really not deep enough for the big box stores. I don't see a major change happening in the neighborhood. And this is its character. And so at the moment, I just say leave it as is. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as has already been stated, this petition is unique in that there is no development in the works that is causing us to do it. You basically have the planning board initiating it and then making no decision. And so if that was the case, if a petitioner had come before this city council tonight on a zoning change, and then they took no position and didn't speak in favor or opposed, then it would just be rejected, I would think. And that would be something that we could do this evening, is just reject it. I think that a lot of the concerns that, or at least one of the concerns that people seem to have is that somebody might come in, a developer might come in and assemble several pieces and then bring in a big box retailer. I think that these lots are not deep enough to support a big box retailer. And so I really don't think that that is very likely to happen. I think the reason that this property is zoned, or this district is zoned for regional retail use, basically is because it is near the 495 interchange. And that when the zoning map was done and that probably the regional retail district was just moved down that far. I think that it's unfair that we have people, that the people who have property in this district were not notified. And I would point out that several people who have property in this neighborhood also live in this neighborhood. And so they pay taxes at the commercial rate for the property that they have here. And then they also pay property taxes for their home. And also, there is something to be said about maintaining the commercial tax base, because maintaining the commercial tax base helps keep residential property taxpayers' taxes low. So I think all of those things, and it would be easy to vote against it, but one of the proponents did make the point that part of this also already has a character of the TMU, and that is true up around the Wentworth Avenue portion of this. And so I think that, we can wait on the planning board and have them make a decision and come back to us as the motion suggests, and I imagine that that will delay action for a while. But the matter is before this board this evening. And maybe no one likes the way it got here, but nevertheless, it is here before us, and there are people down who are in favor of it and people who are opposed. The comments of Councilor Leahy make a lot of sense to me. I think that maybe this is something that deserves a closer look, that there is maybe part of this district that could be changed to TMU and part of it could be retained, and that there may be some middle ground for everybody here. And that's kind of the way I would like to go. I think that that makes a little more sense than just waiting on the planning board. I just really don't think the planning board is going to respond, and I don't think we're going to hear from them. And so the matter's just going to just sit tabled until that time, which I guess is the same as just leaving it alone and voting no on this change. But if there is a genuine interest in trying to do something to prevent big box retail or certain types of retail uses that would be unacceptable just because they would be tremendous traffic generators, and I would point out that the traffic on this segment of Route 38 is already off the charts. And sometimes it's very, very hard to get in and get out of some of the strip malls that are there. It's hard to get out of Wentworth Avenue sometimes. Generally when I come on to Rogers Street, I'm coming from Douglas Road, and so you have you've got the light to help you out with that. But traffic is a big problem. I don't think that we certainly don't need another big box retailer generating more traffic on this area. But there is no question that to enact this zoning change is going to diminish the value of these properties. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's a fact, and I think that there's no denying that. If Council Leahy wanted to make a motion to take a closer look at this and maybe to amend the district to contract it a little bit so that it did include all of the properties, I would be supportive of that, and I think that that would probably be a little step in the right direction and would maybe be a little bit more proactive than just waiting for the planning board. And I sympathize with those people that support Councilor Mercier's motion. I think that
I think that the planning board should have had some sort of a if they initiated it, then there should be some sort of a recommendation. I mean, if it initiated from the planning board, then there should have been at least one person on the planning board that was in support of this, not none. And so that's where I am. I will support Councilor Mercia's motion, unless Councilor Leahy wants to make a motion to give it a closer look and maybe try to amend the district.
Councilor Martin.
Well, just on that, to that last point made by Councilor Kennedy, I guess we've heard from almost every landowner on the street that they're opposed. So I'm not as optimistic as you may be for a middle ground or compromise solution. I just don't think, no matter who's affected, is going to be opposed. Is the feedback I've gotten, for what that's worth.
Councilor Kennedy.
I guess the reason that I made that comment, Councilor Martin, is because I think most of the opposition that I heard, at least, came from the Douglas Road end of the district. And, you know, I'm focused more on the Wentworth Avenue part of the district. And I think that's maybe where maybe something could be done there.
Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few minutes ago, I said that I thought maybe if there was a cooling down period, there could be some common ground reached. Now, if the planning board's going to meet again, and it would be a public meeting, I think that would be the spot to talk about common ground. Maybe some of the parcels may not mind going, as Councilor Leahy said, but if it does go back, there would be another public meeting possibly, and that would be a good spot for the two sides to really sit down and talk, because I'll be honest, I don't want to drive through in my backyard either. And I don't want a business opened up till 3 or 4 in the morning with their lights beaming on my property at 3 and 4 in the morning. So there's a lot to be said for the petition. So maybe there is common ground. If there is going to be another meeting, that would probably be, I don't know how Councilor Leahy feels, that would probably be the place to talk anyway. So, thank you.
Move the question.
Motion to move the question. Roll call.
On Councilor Mercius?
There's no second on the move.
To move the question.
Councilor Lowry.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
On.
Moving the
Moving the
question.
question.
Yes.
Councilor Norn.
No.
Councilor Elliott.
No.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
7 yeas.
Thank you.
Now on the motion.
Now we have on the motion. Roll call, please.
On Councilor Mercia's motion?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
That's right.
Councilor Leahy. Excuse me, Councilor Lowry.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Norn.
No.
Councilor Elliott.
No.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
7 yeas.
Thank you. Next we have
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Mercia.
on this last motion, if we could get some information as to will the property values decrease with the change in zoning from RR to TMU? If we could get that question answered. Thank you.
And Your Honor,
Councilor Leahy.
on this too, can we ask that the, since the, who brought this up? The
Planning board.
planning board, I think that they should take a closer look at it also, you know, and notify people properly before they bring this forward. But, you know, maybe they can consider a compromise, properly notifying people, and then let them look at the situation again. Thank you.
Thank you. Under general public hearings, the next hearing is for ordinance quarterly traffic for June. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor? signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title, in City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, the code with respect to Chapter 266 entitled Vehicles and Traffic. At this point, I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have a utility public hearing. National Grid Underground Electric Conduit to feed the transformer at 65 Perkins Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Petition by National Grid for an underground electric conduit to feed the transformer at 65 Perkins Street. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in favor.
Hi, National Grid, Michelle Stacy, I'm a representative. We're asking to install conduit from an existing transformer to a manhole.
Thank you. I'd open it up for anyone else wishing to speak in favor. In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Move to approve by, motion to refer to wire inspector for report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a petition by National Grid, Verizon to relocate poles for the street corner roundings at Broadway and Wilder Street. And open it up for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Entertain a motion to refer to the wire inspector for report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Lori. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept gifts made to the Pollard Memorial Library in the amount of $455. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Reading by title in City Council vote. Authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept a gift of $455 from Nancy Drew Sleuth to benefit the Pollard Memorial Library.
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Noon. Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote. Authorize the city manager renew lease with Middlesex Community College Lowell campus for parking. Today, motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Lori. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
Thank you.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could take 13, 14, 15, and 17, all those refer to the leases of parking. If we could take them all together, they're all the same with just different garages and different people.
Second.
Motion to take all 4 parking leases together by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Lori. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Motion to approve. So moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. On the motion, Councilor Mendonça.
I just have some questions about the AOT garage item. I believe Lowell High School uses that as parking for staff and students during the school year, which would coincide with this lease. And the lease is, I forget the number, 500, 600 spaces. So my question is, I know it's a large garage, maybe 1,000 spaces, but will there be enough to accommodate both uses simultaneously?
The calculations that we've done, and Mr. Troop is here if he would like to speak on this as well, but the calculations we've done is that there is enough capacity at the AOT for the university's use as well as the Wanna-Lancet use and the high school use of that garage based on the numbers that we see taking place in the garage right now.
That would always be full utilization, I would
It
assume.
would be getting us close to full utilization, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Noon?
What are the term of the, each one of these lease?
They're all 3-year.
3-year, and the payment and...
Excuse me,
Well,
Mr. Troop.
one is 9 years
Oh,
and
excuse
10.
me,
That's what I thought.
Correct. There's a Mahler's Loft is looking to renew their terms, and it was 10 years, that's why it was brought tonight.
10 years, okay. That's what I thought. The payment, they remain the same, is that?
Excuse me?
The payment for the lease?
Remains the same, right, until unless the city council adjusts the market rate lease for garage spaces.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have an order, 60-day trial, various. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Noon, second by Counsel Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. So wish of the council.
But move, is that going to a public hearing? 60-day trial. Move approval.
Move to approve by Counsel Mercia, second by Counsel Mendonça. Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to authorize the manager to execute an LEA with the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated for the property at 137 Willie Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Noon, second by Counsel Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to enter into a land disposition agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated regarding the property located at 137 Willie Street pursuant to the Acre Urban Revitalization and Development Plan, and to consummate disposition of said property by means of donation. It's the wish of the council.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Counsel Martin, second by Counsel Mercia. On the motion, Counsel Mercia.
On the motion, thank you. Thanks to Habitat for Humanity to take these eyesores, and the donation allows them to get special grant, something that probably the city couldn't get, and then it turns this property into a viable entity whereby we, the city, collect taxes. Is this true, Mr. Manager?
That is true.
Yes, so it's a great situation for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to accept a gift of $1,800 from UMass Lowell for new gateway signs. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Mendonça, second by Counsel Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept a gift from the University of Massachusetts Lowell of $1,800 towards the new gateway signage installed near their south campus and a new university crossing location. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Counsel Leahy, seconded by Counsel Lori. Roll call, please.
Counsel Lori.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have an ordinance to create a temporary position of the Lead Hazard Control Grant Program Manager in the Department of Planning and Development. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilman Dodson, seconded by Councilman Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council ordinance. An ordinance creating one temporary position of lead hazard control grant program manager and the salary therefore in the Department of Planning and Development. Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing on July 23rd, 2013 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a vote to transfer $133,118.24 for sick leave buyback. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, second by Councilman Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote. Order to transfer $133,118.24 to cover the deficit in the sick leave buyback account. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Lowry. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Council Lowry.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mendonça.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Council Nguyen.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have reports. Public Safety Subcommittee of July 9th, 2013. Councilor Martin.
I'm sorry. So the Public Safety Subcommittee met earlier this evening. The other members of the committee, Councilor Elliott, Councilor Nguyen, and myself. This was the latest in a series of meetings held at the request of the citywide neighborhood group regarding public safety issues. The topic for this evening's subcommittee meeting was police dispatch procedures. Other members of the council were there, Councilor Mercia, Councilor Mendonça, Councilor Lowry, Councilor Leahy. And we talked, really got a report from Superintendent Friedel, who was also there with Superintendent Taylor and Mr. Willett from the police department, kind of a primer on how the dispatch procedure works. When a call comes in to 911, what's the information that's taken, how that call is processed, how that call is dispatched to a police car for response. There was a lot of data presented, roughly 93,000 calls in the last calendar year, and we saw some enhancements with the additions of iPads to the latest model cruisers. The priority calls are now flagged on the cruiser. We had some demonstration of that technology, which is made possible by the recent upgrades to the 911 center that the council had approved some time ago. So it was really to see what the response was, how many calls the police process in different periods of the year, different periods of the day, different periods of the week. But it was, I think, a proper conclusion was that the police make every effort to respond to every call. You know, if they get multiple calls at the same location, they don't always log in the same call, but at least for me, I was satisfied that we have a pretty good response through the dispatch procedure, and was happy to see that the enhancements that have been added over the last few years.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Entertain then a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, under general petitions, we have a miscellaneous petition by Luis Gonzalez. Request one handicap parking sign on the side of 485 Stevens Street.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. I'd like to suspend the rules and add another request to this handicap parking sign for a woman. Do I need a...
Motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Lowry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Councilor Mercia.
I'd like to request a handicap parking sign for a woman that lives at 383 High Street, but she needs her sign at the side door at Porter Street, which would be right at her doorstep. She has already submitted all the proper paperwork to the city clerk. I'd like to suspend the rules and make those both a 60-day trial. I would have made this motion, but due to the death of my cat, I wasn't in my right mind he was 10 years old, and I loved him, and he died, and I was supposed to make this motion, and I forgot, so I just like to make this motion now, and I did submit the paperwork to the city clerk there.
Motion to include, in addition to Luis Gonzalez's request for a handicap parking sign, the request by Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
So moved. The motion to approve the two together.
Yes,
By
thank
Councilor
you.
Mercia, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. And this is, again, to refer to the traffic engineer.
Right.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Lastly, under general petitions, we have a miscellaneous petition by Patrick Hamilton, request to address the City Council regarding the Liberty Preservation Act. Mr. Hamilton?
My name is Patrick Hamilton. I live on 28 East Durant Street. I'd like to begin by thanking everybody for listening to what I have to say and the city clerk for making this an incredibly easy process. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Liberty Preservation Act. It's my personal opinion that our most important rights as Americans are our civil liberties. They're what define us as a free nation and separate us from dictatorships across the world and throughout history. Unfortunately, some of these have come into questions in recent years, and a troubling example of this is the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, which permits the indefinite military detention of a person without public trial, a military tribunal, and the transfer to a foreign jurisdiction, including a U.S. citizen captured on U.S. soil. In addition to that, Public Law 107-40 allows the President to indefinitely detain anyone, including a U.S. citizen captured on U.S. soil. In other words, I could walk out of this building, be arrested, sent to Guantanamo Bay, not hear one word about what I was being arrested for, and it would all be perfectly legal, and there isn't a single thing I could do about it. The idea of habeas corpus is more than twice as old as our country. It's not only an idea of constitutional rights, but an idea of human rights. This brings me to the Liberty Preservation Act. My proposition for you today is to pass an ordinance that would make it against the law to enforce or assist in the enforcement of the aforementioned provisions of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 and Public Law 107-40. The Liberty Preservation Act that sits in front of each of you does exactly this. This legislation has been passed in towns as nearby as Northampton, Mass., and as far away as Berkeley, California. It's been passed in towns as conservative as League City, Texas, and as progressive as San Fran, California. The governors of Virginia and Alaska have signed this bill into law, and legislative bodies in numerous other states are currently pushing the bill forward in hopes that their respective governors will sign it into law. The Liberty Preservation Act was introduced into our state Senate, but has not moved since January. I believe that if enough communities pass the bill, we can put pressure on our state legislators to do the same. If we pass this bill, we can show that Lowell, Mass. Is a city of both leadership and a role model for liberty, but most importantly, supports our basic rights as Americans and human beings. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a registered speaker on this petition. Mr. Clerk.
He spoke. Mr. Hamilton registered.
Okay. He's the only registered. Thank you. What's the wish of the council?
Refer this to the law department. Motion to refer this to the law department.
Motion to refer to the law department for a report by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have motions. First motion by Councilor Mercia, requests the city manager provide a report as to the status of the former Butler School and the direction the project is taking.
Did we get a
Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On June 26th, there was an article in the newspaper that indicated that the same developer that won the bid to tear down the old Butler School and transform that property into 2 new commercial buildings and create a public road through the site had a federal obstruction charge on his plate. Having read that article prompted me to wonder how we're going to continue this project, and I did read the paper this evening, so it seems like it's still in progress, and we're still going to have some development. And the best part of this whole thing is that it was a vacant piece of property for many, many years, not generating any excitement by being utilized and not having any tax revenue. So if we can still continue that and make that happen, that'd be the greatest thing, because that's what we like to do. Thank you. I think we're moving somewhere with that. So that's my concern.
Councilor Elliott?
So, Mr. Managers, do we do background checks on people like this? I mean, what if, should we, I mean, is financially, are we all set with this project, or?
They've paid for the property. They have certain.
They have paid for it?
Yes, they have, and they have certain, and they've torn down the Butler School, and they paid for that with the contractor that did the work. We obviously assume that. They've been complying with the requirements with regards to the plan design that was put in place as part of the disposition agreement, and they've already begun the work of leasing up space at the property based on the information we've received, and that comes from a credible source. And they're getting ready, according to their attorney, to come in and go through the site plan process. So everything is moving forward, and as I said, we received the money that was due to us, and they do have to comply with the provisions of the design that they put forward to us. That's part of the legal requirements. So, but as far as a background check, no. In all of the properties that we've ever transferred, I don't think the city's ever done that. So it's raises some interesting questions, but.
So moving.
And I don't, and frankly, if I may, I don't think that we necessarily would have had any inkling of any of this, even if we'd done a criminal background check.
So moving forward, we have reassurances or, a backup plan if something happens? Meaning, I understand they get paid for the project, but, we don't want the vacant piece of property to just sit idle. I mean, are there performance bonds or other assurances that the city can put in place to make sure that that project is developed?
Mr. Bakey?
As with most of the deeds out from the city, when we sell property, there is a clause whereby if they do not perform within a certain period of time, the city has the authority to basically refund their purchase price and reacquire the property from them. Now, obviously, there's a lot of implications of that and some questions as to whether that would be the appropriate action when that time comes. But in this case, they basically have a year to demonstrate that they're well under construction with the project. And again, all indications is, as recently as this morning, we had a conversation with an agent representing the development team, and they seem to be taking all the necessary steps to be moving forward with the project, and there appears to be no reason to believe they will not meet the requirements of the deed to them. And they certainly have met the first significant milestone, which was tearing the building down. And obviously that's not an insignificant expense nor an insignificant action. And if they were planning to not proceed with the project, I would think that would be the thing they would have put on hold, not just being a few weeks later than they might have wanted to be in terms of submitting things to the land use boards.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a quick little question on this, too. When we sell a piece of property or when something goes to a developer, it's usually they have to give us so much money at the time. Not a background check, but, for example, if I put down I was going to build a $800,000 development on Gorham Street, and is there some way you'll look to make sure that financially I could carry that out? Yeah.
We actually, yes, we do that, and I believe that was a topic of discussion that we had the night we made the vote to transfer it to the new owner.
So my bid would be thrown out. I'd give you the money.
You didn't have the financial backing, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bakey, do you want to add anything?
I can just say definitively that typically when we're selling property, particularly of this nature, there is a comparative criteria in the RFP process that in order to be responsive to, they have to demonstrate, not just tell us they have the money, but in fact provide letters from lenders or investors or others that indicate exactly where the money is going to be coming from, committing it to the project in order to receive a highly advantageous. That was the case with this project, and again, we have no indication to believe that isn't proceeding.
Thank you. You know, I thought that was the process, so I'm out anyway.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Mercier.
The Patriots didn't do their background check either.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Council Laurie. Request the city manager have proper department review ordinances or laws in the city regarding panhandling and develop a plan to prohibit and enforce the same. Seconded by Council Leahy. Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is always a problem, but it seems to decrease for many years and then increase. Many people view it as a minor problem, but for a lot of people, when they're being confronted by individuals for money, they do get intimidated. They should be intimidated, especially I'm getting more calls that the people asking for money are becoming more standoffish. And it's not a low problem. This is something that goes on everywhere. If you go up to, I won't name the town, you come off the exits, they're there asking for money, and I know people are in need, but you know, I would rather take them, I don't want to see people arrested, I'd rather take them to a food pantry than, but my question is, what type of ordinances do we have on the books? What type of ordinances do we have to protect the city, business owners? Can we come up with a program to educate business owners what their rights are? And, you know, I just would like to see the city send out a message, not in Lowell. It's not something you're ever going to stop. But I think, you know, the police department was here earlier in the evening talking about the 4th of July, and there were some questions about fireworks and their busy time between 5 and 7, and how many panhandling calls they had that night. And it's an issue in the city, and it's something I believe should be addressed. So I would really like to see what type of ordinances do we have? Do we have to make them stronger? How do we protect our police department? How do we protect our business owners? And what rights citizens may have, of course, if they're confronted. That was just a gesture of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Leahy.
Thank you. I'm glad Council Loring brought this motion up. It's a good motion. I've inquired myself with the police department, and they do everything that they can to move the panhandles along so they're not bothering people, especially downtown. And this would be a good motion to see, you know, what we can do and what tools we can give our police department to try to correct this problem in the city. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this motion? Council Elliott.
So currently, there are no regulations on the book, state or otherwise, in the city to address this, so the police can, I mean, I know they're trying to move them along, but through you, Mr. Mayor, to the solicitor, because I mean, we should have something to give the police an opportunity to say, look, you can't do this. If so, you're going to get fined, or et cetera. And I understand there are some hardships. I appreciate it, but you know, it doesn't set a good presence downtown either, or anywhere else in the city, quite frankly.
Councilor, I can assure you that the law department will take a very close look at this. We know that it's an important issue to the council and to citizens. With that said, I would also add that Worcester enacted a panhandling ordinance earlier this year. Worcester is now involved in litigation that was filed against the city by 3 citizens, 2 homeless individuals, and a member of the Worcester School Committee, alleging that certain panhandling activity is expressive conduct protected by the First Amendment. The ACLU is representing those 3 plaintiffs together with a private counsel. They have moved for preliminary injunction seeking to enjoin the city of Worcester from enforcing its ordinance. And the parties now, according to the local press in Worcester, are in discussions to see whether or not they can resolve their differences.
So cities like Washington DC or New York City or, larger cities like that, they don't have any ordinance of any nature, any city law prohibiting that?
Offhand, Counselor, I can't speak to jurisdictions outside Massachusetts, but I can say that in 1997, the Supreme Judicial Court struck down an ordinance that was passed by the General Court that sought essentially to bar panhandling. And the SJC, the case was Benefit, actually. This is a 1997 ruling in which the SJC struck down that law and said this conduct is expressive conduct. Now, one of the arguments made by the plaintiffs in the Worcester case is that, in fact, the manner in which Worcester went forward to try to bar panhandling also affects fundraising activities. Now, I'm not making a judgment one way or the other about the ordinance, but that's an argument that the plaintiffs have raised in the litigation, that, in fact, not only will this ordinance detract from panhandling, but it's also going to impact fundraising, political activity, and the like.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to the report. I think it makes some sense, to put something in place. And because there are so many social service agencies, nonprofit organizations in this city and we reach out to everybody that, to prevent something like this, homelessness, poverty, food bank, but there are those that will still try to skirt the issue or skirt the law. And okay, I've said my piece and I'll look forward to the report. Thanks.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to add, I thought a couple of years ago we did have an ordinance. For example, one year I think we were raising money with the post office for charity, and we would go to the intersections with the bags. The firefighters go out there with their boots. A couple of years I volunteered at the Folk Festival. We had the Bucket Brigade. But the point is, I think you could pull a permit with the city to do fundraising, in that you had to pull a permit. And that way, if citizens called and said, there's people collecting money, so on and so forth, you could say it was legitimate. So maybe if we could look at that too. Because there are, as Councilor Elliott says, a lot of good organizations. They do fundraising. And it doesn't hurt to say, yeah, they did pull permits and they're out there. You'd hate to see it come to this, but the law is the law. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Laurie, request the city manager have Lowell Police Department develop a motorcycle safety program for Lowell residents. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is something I've actually talked to a couple of motorcycle officers too. It does two things. One, it would not ensure, but at least try to promote safe driving practices with motorcycle drivers in Lowell. This would be for Lowell residents. I've been riding for years, and it never hurts to have someone look at you, put on the brakes and stop and things like that. But I think it could reach out to a lot of the young people in the city to do things properly, maintain their bikes, put the mufflers on, don't have, do certain things that irritate drivers. But I think it also opens the door for the police to work with the general public. A couple of months ago, I put in for self-defense classes for women. I talked to the chief of police, LaValle. They couldn't keep up with the demand. I hope they're still doing it. I think that they will once they get their staffing up. But it breaks down the barriers with the public, and I think it would be good for some of the best riders, if not the best around, are the police officers. They have very stringent training on motorcycles, and everything they do is very, very good. So I think it was just one more thing to offer Lowell residents, and again, one more thing to break down the barriers with the police and the public and have them kind of work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Martin. Request the city manager provide an update on the impact of the state budget on the recently adopted city budget. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, maybe this is a little premature. We know I guess I had filed this in anticipation. I guess the House and Senate have passed their budget, but it hasn't necessarily been approved by the governor yet. However, we have certain assumptions in our budget based on the state budget. So I think for this month, we're probably operating under a 1/12 state budget. But when the state budget process is finalized, I would appreciate a report as to how it impacts what we were expecting.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Council Kennedy. Request the Law Department prepare an amendment to 436 of the zoning ordinance that will prohibit construction trailers being placed on construction development sites prior to 90 days before construction begins. Require that construction trailers be removed from development sites within 90 days after construction ends, and explicitly prohibit construction trailers for any residential sites. Second by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the motion more or less speaks for itself. Basically, it just would limit the amount of time that a construction trailer could be on site beforehand and afterwards. The motion reads 90 days. That's pretty arbitrary on my part, and so when the Law Department and the Division of Planning and Development are looking at this, if 45 days is sufficient, then probably 45 days is a better way to go. And then also, I know that the zoning ordinance does speak a little bit to residential use for trailers, but I think just for clarity that it would be good to just be explicit in that there should be no residential use for construction trailers on a construction or development site.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me. Mr. Solicitor.
I just have a question, and that is, when you say construction trailers, you're talking about the office trailer like that they put on sites, the big, they look like a small mobile home or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, because a lot of contractors will bring their trailer, for example, painters do and carpenters do, they bring their trailer to the site and they work out of it. They have their saws and what have you, and that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about...
Well, that is what I'm talking about. It would be those types of trailer. It would be not a trailer that will come every day and then leave every day, but there's construction sites where the trailer would just stay, and it'd be stationary, and it would stay for a certain amount of time while construction was going on. And in some of those instances, the trailer would be there beforehand, and maybe would be there afterwards. And so what the intent of the motion is to limit the amount of time before that the trailer can be put there in preparation for the development, and likewise the amount when it has to be removed after after construction has ended. And then on top of that, I mean, I realize that these trailers have plans and they're sort of kind of temporary offices. What I'm asking for is that it be explicit in the zoning that those trailers cannot be used for residential use, even on a short-term basis. That you can use it for an office, you know, from 9 to 5 or whenever construction's going on, but you shouldn't have people living in the trailers.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Councilman Donson, if you take the chair.
Motion by Mayor Murphy, request city manager report on potential to update library and city hall restrooms with changing tables for the general public. Second by Councilor Mercer. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This doesn't really have that much to do with me, because I have an office where I can change, but the general public does not when they come to City Hall. This isn't required necessarily by law, but it is something that a lot of various businesses will do out of courtesy to their customers, and I think that's it's an appropriate thing for the City Hall to be a more welcoming place. Thank you.
Councilor Lurie.
I thought it was a good motion. I think it's a good idea. I was just wondering if it was okay with the mayor, could we expand it to
other municipal buildings, like, I look at the parking garages, people come to boarding house, people come down to the folk festival, and there may be a need at that time for these type of situations. And I think it's a great idea, and as I said, especially the parking garages, that they're heavily used now for festivals and things like that. So if it was okay with the mayor, really just have a comprehensive look at some of the buildings and add them in.
Amendment by Council Laurie to add other municipal buildings.
As needed.
Second by Council Mercer. Any further discussion? Motion as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager consider appropriate signage directing visitors to wheelchair accessible entrance through JFK Civic Plaza. Second by Council Laurie. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. Again, this is just to make City Hall a little bit more accessible. I did receive a complaint from someone who would come to the opposite side of the building and didn't have any signage directing them to the opposite side. So if we can install some signs at the appropriate height before the steps, obviously, so that people are routed to the back of City Hall.
Council Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. We did at a time ago have the proper signage, but over the years, I just took it for granted that since I was accustomed to where it is, I forgot it wasn't there anymore. So it's good to bring this back up because I didn't realize it's not there anymore. It should be.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager work with the Disability Commission and Fire Department to ensure that fire alarms installed in homes appropriately alert hearing impaired residents. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. I know that the fire department has some safety initiatives, and I was hoping that they'd be able to work with the Disability Commission to identify some of the residents most at risk, where a fire alarm, if you're hearing impaired, where a traditional fire alarm might not be the best thing, and where you need something more advanced that sends off a lot of light that gets people to wake up if it's at night, or if they're in another room, they'd be able to be alerted. So if we can look at ways that the fire department can work with the Disability Commission to ensure that this happens, and people have better access to information anyways about the need for it. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Just one question. So this is about getting information out, right? Not really like, not enforcing it. It's just kind of a way that we get information out.
Mayor Murphy.
Well, I think there are probably a few issues that would come up in the review of it. Potentially, it could be in inspection, when you have rental inspections that have just started, that, people, we have a number of elderly that tend to be more hearing impaired, or, people just are naturally deaf, that we ought to have some, review of whether or not we're making sure that those devices are actually working for the needs of the people within those homes, or whether they be rented or actually owned.
Okay. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on the impact of sequestration on CDBG funding and according to what priority adjustments will be made. Yeah. Seconded by Counselor Kennedy. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I received a letter basically adjusting the city's amounts this year because of sequestration, and I'm curious to look at what the impact on the programs and services that we offer through that, what the impact is, and how the adjustments are actually made after the fact to the various programs and according to what priorities they're made. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager provide council with update on downtown stat initiative and neighborhood indicators project for further discussion. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is a motion that had been made last year with Councilor Roddick when he was on the council. And I'd just like to get an update on it. I think it is important to follow through on so that we do have a better idea of how effective our programs are and you know, that in a way that would lend itself maybe to adjustment of those if need be. But it is important to get an idea of how effective we're being with the programs. We have, going back to CDBG funding, we have the neighborhoods managers impact. And if we're able to you know, build a rationale for the impact that has on a particular neighborhood and the businesses around it, then certainly we can continue to work and look at other programs that might work as well.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager review annual city census form and consider update to include voluntary feedback and information which might strengthen community through emergency preparedness, skill sharing, and hyper-local economic development. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is really aimed at looking how we make the city a more resilient one. Some other cities have asked for volunteered information by residents so that they can look at you know, different skills within a particular neighborhood. So in an emergency situation, you know where doctors are, and you're able to rely on the immediate neighborhood for those types of situations, but also that you're able to rely on people in your neighborhood that have other skills in carpentry or in various trades, so that you're building a kind of community that might not otherwise exist. I think you know, closely related to that would be some kind of mapping effort. If you were able to put together something for a census a study, that you'd also be able to then map all of that information so that it'd be more useful to residents. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion is a joint motion by Mayor Murphy and Councilor Noon. Request city manager work with school department to develop proposal for Massachusetts Public Library construction grant to start a satellite library system within priority schools for use by the community. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is something I've made with Councilor Noon, who has really advocated a more full use of our school facilities. The actual construction, library construction grant has requested letters of intent for, I think, sometime at the end of August or early September. So if we can work with the schools, which in some cases are already open till 9 o'clock, if we can work with the school department to identify the schools that made the most sense, This is an idea that has been done in a number of South American, Latin American cities, Medellin in Colombia, as well as Curitiba in Brazil, Mexico City. This idea of library parks or lighthouses of knowledge, that you have satellite libraries within the neighborhoods so that you can build literacy, not just for the students of those schools, but also for the adults as well.
Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I think this is a good motion. I would want to point out that I think we should be working with the schools to strengthen our libraries during the day, because due to budget cuts over the last few years, we haven't been able to reorganize. The libraries are not utilized during the daytime. I think that should be our priority first, and then we should be looking for grants to utilize the libraries into the evening with the neighborhoods. So I just want to throw that out because I think it's very important. It was a shame that we had to basically dismantle our libraries, and we haven't brought them back yet. Thank you.
Councilor Laurie? Thank you. The only question I had, and I think it's a good motion, I'm an avid reader, is when it comes to the schools, do they have to have background checks for people coming in and out? That was a concern I had. And, but I think it's a well worth idea. And if there is a way we could do it through the schools where people wouldn't really have to, I don't know how you would do it, but that was my only concern is I think even when we go to read, that's a question for them, you know? But that might be the only block, but I think it's a great idea. Councilor Mercer?
I have a sincere problem when we have a library in a school and we're allowing people from the public to go in there. I don't support that. If we had such a thing where they went in after hours, then we have to figure a way to keep the school open. When you have a sexual predator, they are around children. It's like, here we go. I have a concern about that. I don't support this motion.
Councilor Laurie? You know, one thing we had years ago, because I agree with the mayor and Councilor Noon, readings are very important. We used to have a mobile bookmobile. And I don't know if there's money out there, and it would do the same purpose. Actually, it used to go to the elderly housing, it would go to the schools, and maybe that's a road we could look at too, is to see how we can get something like that back up and going, because I think it's a great idea. Mayor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, the motion doesn't call for predators in the school libraries.
Well,
it would come, it would be open, the access would be open to people after school hours. Like I said, in making the motion, there are a number of schools within the department that are kept open because there are other programs that are actually grant funded. And so this is a construction grant, which means that it's geared for capital improvements. Now, whether or not it can be used for, reconfiguring some of the libraries within the schools for public access is something that we can look at. Also, whether, I would think that one of the issues would be with the electronic system and how those libraries are coordinated with the main library here right next door, and looking at ways that you could use that funding to update the libraries, as we haven't been able to do with the schools alone, to update the libraries so that they're coordinated more with our main public library, Pollard Library.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I believe years ago, as Councilor Laurie indicated, that we have a library on wheel or some sort like that that went around, and certainly help in terms of make it more accessible for the resident to, loan book, and so that they maybe their children can, instead of coming to the public library that have to drive from wherever, the Lower Highland or somewhere in Pawtuckaville. I think this proposal certainly go two-way. That is, the money that you apply, and if you get it, it go to address the concern that Councilor Leahy indicated, that some of our schools need some improvement, and maybe it can go to that, as the mayor said, capital improvement and for the library, and make it those library that already open, or those school library that already open late already, make it more accessible for the kid in the area. And along that line, it may also help some of the older residents who want to learn English, is because English is their second language. The people that live in that area know who the predator are already. Okay, and there'll be sign if they are a sex offenders, say level 3 sex offender, there'll be sign flashing all over the library, those public area already. And of course, when they open at late hours, those schools that happen right now, they're open late hours, they have staffing. So, I think this is a proposal that certainly help bring some sort of connection between the Lowell library, the public library, and the school, and also bring in the community members that hardly, involved with the system to get involved and to come to the school and to access book and stuff like that. So I don't see a harm in apply for this grant and make it good for our city. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the motion just asks that request that the city manager work with the school department to develop a proposal, and it's for new construction. I don't imagine that they would get enough money to do something at every library, but I would expect that it would be new construction or satellite libraries that would be constructed on school grounds that have enough of a lot size to be able to support an additional building. And I would expect that in developing the program, the city manager and the school department would take into consideration the security that's required, and that it would have a separate entrance and so forth and so on. And so I think the motion is a good one. If we can get the money, then I think that's fine.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on efforts to develop a food truck program and potential coordinated effort with Economic Development Division and COOL to identify and map event locations to encourage their use. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A number of other cities have found quite a bit of success with their food truck programs. I don't know that the city is really that restrictive in terms of what it does or its fee schedule. Certainly its annual fee schedule seems to be pretty reasonable, but its shorter term uses might be looked at. But I think working with the Economic Development Division and COOL to look at places where it makes sense, but also at times where it makes sense. You have a number of people in the parks throughout the summer. You have UMass Lowell with all its students in the fall and in springtime, where I think you could really find probably enough people to support that kind of enterprise. And the idea behind it is really an economic development one, because if you can build your business, or at least start your business as just a truck without all the commercial taxes that accompany an actual property, I think that you can begin to sort of build up a base where you can potentially grow into a restaurant. But current restaurants can also supplement their own current enterprises in some ways expand their base. So I think it's something that we ought to look at as a way to promote some of the local businesses that are here, but also could grow out of it.
Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They do a food truck program, or actually I think it's a food truck fest down in Somerville. And one of the things that I like about Somerville, and one of the things that you may consider, Mr. Manager, when you're looking at this is, they have like these little fests for everything down there. So they have like a porch band fest where they have like little rock and roll bands that are on different porches and people walk around for that. They have a fluff fest because I think Fluffinut or Fluff Marshmallow was invented down in Somerville. And these things are just, they're not attracting 100,000 people. They're attracting probably a small amount of people and probably mostly local people, but they have a lot of them, and it's not every weekend, but it's pretty close to every weekend. And I think that type of thing is a real good idea. And they have the food truck fest, and maybe that's kind of what the mayor is talking about a little bit. But I think that that's one thing that they do in Somerville that I think is a real good idea and something that we should do here if we could, if it works.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on permitted use of barbecue grills in recreational parks and to promote their safe use in public spaces. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. As Councilor Kennedy alluded to in the last motion, the food does attract people. The food trucks, they bring in hundreds and hundreds of people down to places like Somerville. And anybody that works here in City Hall knows where to find the manager when food is in the building. So food does attract people, and this really just really gets the most out of the resources that we have, the parks.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Councilor Mercy.
Sorry. Is this motion saying that you'd like to initiate a permit program policy so that people can have grills in parks?
It's just to get a report, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Murphy.
It's just to get a report from the city administration on what is permitted and to take a look at that.
Because I did receive some calls on this particular motion where people were saying to me, I live over in Centerville by a park, and people come and have their picnic and their fried chicken and everything else, and they're cooking on little hibachis, and when they leave, they're throwing the chicken bones all over the place. Now, I'm wondering who inspects this, or who follows through and sees this. Our Parks Department employees have to go and pick up all the dirty diapers, the chicken bones, and everything else that's left by people who have no regard for any place. And it's a shame because these are the people that spoil it for the good people. I know that along the Pawtucket Boulevard, you see the boathouse, the bathhouse, and you see a lot of people and they're having a grand time, but you go there the next day and you'll see a certain segment of the area that is not picked up. So that is the state. I'd like to know with this motion, what else is entailed in that, like what policy do we have in place? How can we reassure the public that they don't have to look out their window the next morning and see all this stuff flying all around? So that's just a part of
Assume
it.
that will be included in the report.
Yes, if it's a report, then I'd like to know that part of the report. And who's gonna enforce this?
Council Leahy.
I'm sure in the report, like right now, you can't have an open flame in a park, so we'll get a report on that with if it can be used safely or it can't be. But as of now, I don't think we can can't have fire in the parks, so.
We've already had the motion passed. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on the Parks and Recreation Department use of pesticides and potential draft of pesticide-free land management ordinance. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is to look at what we're doing in our park operations and to see whether we can't do something better that promotes public health in a healthy environment. I know that the Green Building Commission had at some point worked on a draft of this ordinance, and I'd like to see whether it makes sense to implement.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager explore creation of a technology advisory committee to suggest policies on the effective use of technology in municipal operations and establish an urban mechanics mini-grant program to spur further innovation from within the community. Second by Councilor Laurie. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate certainly the work that MIS department does. We heard during the budget hearings how many requests they get and respond to. And at the same time that they're responding to all of those requests, they were able to still work on complete revamping of the website, which a number of councils had called for. But I think that because of the nature of technology and how quickly things change, that it can be important to get outside input every now and then on what the sort of changing state of things are and how that might be used to improve our operations. Similarly, I think the city of Boston has an entire department devoted to new urban mechanics. Certainly, we don't have the resources for that. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best way to do it, or the way that's more reflective of what the future of technology really is. By just having a small grant program, you would be able to use this idea of crowdsourcing to get as many good ideas from the community of how we can develop technologies that either improve current services or provide entirely new ones. And so I think that it would be worth looking at being able to tap into the talent that we do have here in the city so that we might do things more effectively.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. It looks to me like it's just after 10. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Noon. Roll call.
Council Laurie. Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mendonça.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Motion to suspend, what is the vote? To go past the 10 o'clock rule?
Yes.
No.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Council Norn.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
No.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Counsel Kennedy, second by Counsel Mercer.
We can put off the executive session.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Last four.